Hello and welcome to Chatz, a television podcast's sci-fi bonus series, TrekChatz, where two people watch through Star Trek for the very first time. My name is Alan, and I'm joined as always by a mysterious new Klingon who has hopped aboard the ship. It's Magellan.
Greetings, Commander.
Ooh.
It's good to be here. Hello.
It's good to have you, Ensign. I'm thrilled that we're here. I'm thrilled to be back on the station that just won't quit. And I'm thrilled that we have some really, really excellent TV to talk about tonight. Today. It's going to be a long one, folks. So strap the hell in. You're looking at your runtime.
Oh, yeah.
And let's freaking party.
First of all, Alan, have you been since our last TrekChatz recording weeks ago? I could tell you exactly when it was.
I'd love that, because then I can look at my calendar and tell you some specific highlights.
Well, last time we ended season 3 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine at the end of November 2024. So we've had about a month and a half since then, the month of December, the holiday season. You know,
it's the holiday season. Yeah, holiday was great. Super duper restful. I feel like, I talk a lot about like the apartments, the different living situations, and I really love this apartment, man. Like, God, knock on wood. I have had like the only issue I've had recently is I had some packages taken from my mail room, but that's like really small peanuts compared to how happy I am to be in this space and to have it well furnished, and I can come here to recharge after a long week of work and life. Spent a lot of time with the family. Spent the time teaching kids. I got into the Pokemon trading card game since the last time we talked. That's the new thing. We went to PAX in December. That was really fun. I know that some people don't listen to all of TrekChatz, but they do listen to all of TrekChatz, which is fascinating to me. So there are genuinely folks out there who don't know what we've been up to, who don't hear the little updates. And there are some people who listen to only the beginning and end of chats, so they only get the updates and not the TV discussion. So for them, I'll tell you, Xena's been really good. You should try to listen to those if you can. We do a good job summarizing, and yeah, things have been pretty good on this front. Can't complain too much. What about you?
Things have been good. I really related to Worf in this season of Deep Space Nine, which we'll talk about. Because Worf, he's in a new workplace that's kind of similar to what he's used to, but different pace of work, different role. And he's having to figure out, how do I bring my Worfness to this, make connections with new people, but also kind of be open to developing new skills. So that's been a lot of the last month or so for me, because I'm at a new job that I started right before our previous TrekChatz, but I'm in the swing of it now, and that's been good. So yeah.
The reason I was giggling before, besides the fact that I like your voice, is I was gonna make some comment like, "What's new? Is something rotten in the state of Denmark?" But I couldn't think of the line, and you know how my brain loves to misremember things. What it remembered was something's fucked up in El Segundo. Not even close, man. Which, unfortunately, let's be real for 2 seconds, something is fucked up in El Segundo. The California wildfires have been horrible. Our hearts go out to all the people.
A lot of love to our friends, generally and quite specifically, who've been impacted by those fires. Yeah, please consider sending money in the direction of helping to support California and the recovery effort and the containment effort of those fires, because it's been pretty bad. So yeah. Also, things might get fucked up in the state of Denmark soon if we continue down this road of imperializing Greenland or whatever the hell that is. So
Greenland, we want to take over Canada. We love our Canadian listeners. We don't want to conquer you, but sometimes our president says stupid things.
Yeah. So let's just say Deep Space Nine, in some ways this season, was an escape from the news, and in some ways was like eerily appropriate.
Totally.
So yeah. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah. So specifically tonight, we're talking about Star Trek Deep Space Nine Season 4, Part 1, which is 401, The Way of the Warrior through 412 Crossfire, depending on how you number the episodes. This was a minor bit of annoyance for us, like labeling episodes in our notes, because Paramount Plus considers The Way of the Warrior to be 2 episodes, and so the next one's going to 4 or 3. So technically, that on that Crossfire is 413. The point is, we watched through Crossfire. So whatever order the episodes before that come, that's what we watched through.
Yeah, we watched one half of the season.
Yes. Yeah. However you demarcate that. So one of the first things I always like to ask, or we always like to talk about, is what was this experience like for you? What was watching season 4 part 1 for you? How did you watch it? Who did you watch it with? How did you condense or expand your watch time? What was that like for you?
Did we come to an agreement about how we are going to refer to the episodes? Because we differed in our notes, and I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. I'm going to check how Memory Alpha does it, and maybe we should just go off of that.
Oh, like episode order, you mean?
Like the number, like episode 2, episode 3 is like up for debate.
Oh, I also... Yeah,
I numbered it the Paramount Plus way, and you numbered it not the Paramount Plus way.
We can do it. We can just do it the Paramount Plus way and call. That means that Crossfire is just 413, and we go backwards from there. That's fine.
Yeah, it looks like that's how Memory Alpha does it. Also,
okay, I'll just quickly fix my notes then.
Okay. Yeah. So my watch experience this time around, I watched the first half of this chunk of episodes with Amanda, who was very excited to watch more Star Trek, and luckily there were no episodes where Cisco went to an alternate timeline and had sex with multiple coworkers of his or whatever.
Oopsie.
To be like, ew, this is gross. No, thank you. But then I kind of slammed into having to watch these for the podcast. So a bunch of them I watched, like 5 of them I watched this morning. In kind of like this semi-conscious state of, I think back to sleep, and then going back later in the morning. I got to rewatch this episode to make sure I understand what happened. So I ended up watching everything. But in the process of trying to watch 5 this morning, when I was drifting off into sleep, it was influencing my dreams, and the episodes that were playing while I was sleeping, there was like politicking and I've got to protect Earth and that kind of stuff. So that was a little trippy. But yeah, so 2 kind of halves of it for me, and the jump in quality of these episodes from previous Deep Space Nine episodes was frankly startling.
Yes. I was like I was startled. I was thrown aback. I'm like, this is too good. This is another A. This is another A. This is for sure an A. What's happening?
Yeah.
What changed, Magellan?
I have some thoughts about that, but we can get into that in a second.
Right.
But yeah, that was just because, people have always raved about Deep Space Nine, and it's one of those shows where it's like, oh my God, it gets so good.
Yeah.
And I thought we'd gotten there.
Yeah.
Last season it's like, okay, this is better than TNG, I think.
Yeah.
It's good. But no, this is now like pretty excellent. And I don't know, like it kind of could be this excellent if you just started here. Maybe there's like certain things that you need to watch. Obviously, I would recommend you watch the whole show and have a good life. But it's just that good.
This is a good jumping on point, is how I would phrase that. If you were watching this in the 90s and you started here, I don't think you would be that confused. I think occasional moments like Nog being like, hey, what's up with the Bell riots? You'd be like, I wonder if there's an episode about that. Huh? What is he
There's
saying?
lore?
Why does he look like Cisco? You figure those things out, or you learn more about why, like who Cassidy Yates is, like what Cisco's deal is as the emissary, why him and Kira's relationship is like that. And you would have already known that Odo is extremely down bad for Kira. You wouldn't have found that out this time, but
Yeah.
and also, yeah, just knowing like we already know who the changelings are. The changelings are a problem. That was where we left off at the end of season 3. It was like, oh, there's more changelings than we thought. I hope that's not going to be a problem. It totally is. Who could have guessed it? Babylon 5 could never. I think the comparisons to Babylon 5 are going to come a lot when we talk about the two-parter towards the end here.
Yeah, this season feels like now we're fully in the territory of these shows are doing similar things in different ways that I think are worth comparing and contrasting. It's not even just the like, oh, a space station dreaming of peace in the somewhere in the night. It's more
the term martial law is used in both of these shows.
Yeah, the comparisons are actually more substantial,
yes.
I think, in this season, which is interesting. They're kind of like developing from different places towards similar preoccupations.
Yeah.
So anyway, what was your watch experience for this half of the season?
It's part of the core of the Chatz sort of romance, which is actually a romance that Magellan and I have, is that we have different but very compatible flavors of ADHD. And so Magellan thrives with that sort of like last minute, if I watch all 10 of these in a row, that's going to feel good for my brain. For me, that feels very bad for my brain. So I sent a text to him when I was like really, really like wired from caffeine and overworking myself for my job, which has gotten really stressful recently. And I was like, I feel like we fucked up. I feel like we've completely ruined that. This timeline's off. I never knew we were recording this. I feel like tomorrow in the next 5 minutes we're gonna have to watch 87 episodes. I don't know what to do. And then you very calmly and we're like, okay, we had planned this part. I understand that we didn't maybe time this. The holidays kind of goofed up our timing a little bit. I genuinely do need I just need to know when the TrekChatz is coming. Even if I watch within the week before we record, I'd like to know that it's looming. That actually helps me. This is what I mean, that we're like cross-compatible in a way. And so it felt like it was going to be so stressful, but I was picking at this for the last like week or so. It's just that it was like I only had watched like 6 episodes before yesterday, and then all of yesterday I watched the other like 7 or something. Which was a good experience. And this is the other thing I was texting someone about is like I think that I hate that final day where I have to watch a ton of episodes back to back. But when it's a really, really cold Saturday and nothing else is going on, and you can just throw it on, fold some laundry, take some notes, have my little laptop or my phone out, depending on which session I was doing. Oh, I love it. And especially because these episodes are fire, I constantly found myself like putting the laundry down and being like, hold on, what's going on? Odo? Really? So I was really locked in by the time I got once I found my momentum and was like watching these many episodes in a row. I really, really had a good time. And
I also find with things like that where if it's a marathon that I have to do for whatever reason, it's more intimidating to me if it's a show where the episodes are like more independent of one another. So when we were watching TNG, you need to watch 7 TNG episodes today.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'm going to have to like spool up my brain 7 different times to understand what's going on with these guys, whose episode is it, okay, what parts of this are going to matter. It feels as intimidating to my brain as being told like you have to watch 7 movies today.
Yeah.
As opposed to especially this season, there was a lot more continuity and interconnectedness between the episodes, and it feels like DS9 is moving further in that direction.
Yeah.
So it's more like you have to watch a really long movie today. Like it feels like a different proposition for somebody to say, today we're watching 7 episodes of Game of Thrones versus today we're watching 7 episodes of
Monk.
Monk. Yeah. Well, Monk's great though. I'd watch 10 episodes of Monk. I'd watch Monk all day, but it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like Cheers. Cheers also great, but fuck.
More like a drama, like 7 Law and Order episodes. Like
sure.
Like there's just a difference in what that feels like. But this was a very good experience to marathon, and I think rewarded doing that, which was nice. So I have some production background thoughts about why we see such a significant shift in the quality of the season.
Okay, hit me with it.
So, okay, contextually, right? Let's see. This season is airing. Star Trek Deep Space Nine is airing from
October 1995 is when it starts.
Yep, 95 to 96.
Yep. That's a long
Voyager.
season. It goes into I guess the whole season goes into June, but what we watch doesn't go that far.
Voyager is also starting in 1995. And even the Voyager season starts before this one does. Starts in January of 1995. So by this point, Michael Piller, who was a showrunner on Star Trek: The Next Generation, partway through, I think he started showrunning TNG in season 3.
Yes.
And then he moves and co-creates Deep Space Nine with what's his face, who people maybe don't like, Rick Berman.
Yeah.
So Michael Piller and Rick Berman are co-running it, and Michael Piller is the primary showrunner. And I was reading some background info that I think is interesting to go into the Memory Alpha details. I didn't consult like original interviews or anything, so if I get some of this story wrong, I apologize. But this season marks a time where DS9 has a new showrunner, Ira Steven Behr. And Ira Steven Behr had kind of been in and out of the Star Trek franchise prior to this point. He was in TNG's writer's room for a bit, brought in almost as like a mediating force between Michael Piller and some of the writers who had been writing earlier in the series. And Michael Piller was like kind of frustrated with them and trying to get them to shift the way that they were writing episodes. And they were maybe more in this kind of like Gene Roddenberry old guard style approach to the show. They were frustrated with Michael Piller's creative direction. And so Ira Steven Behr was kind of like a go-between peacemaker in that writer's room. There's a lot of court politics that you can read about in these different Star Trek writers' rooms. And then the sense I get is after that experience, he was kind of like, I'm out. I don't want to do this.
It's tense. I remember the reading that he felt like the writing rooms was super duper tense and like, there was a lot of hierarchy nonsense.
Yeah. But then they wanted to bring him back into Deep Space Nine, which was intriguing to him because it was an opportunity to write a different kind of Star Trek show. And so Ira Steven Behr was the way that he's thought of by the fandom. He was a big part of crafting the Dominion as an antagonistic force and kind of building that up over the course of the prior seasons. And then he becomes the showrunner at the end of season 3 and into season 4, which is when Michael Piller goes to run Voyager.
Right.
So that's what's happening here. And I think, there's a few things going on probably about the shift in quality. I think you have, at this point in Deep Space Nine's run, writers who had been on TNG for a while and have moved over to Deep Space Nine and have had some experience in Deep Space Nine by this point. Like maybe they've been in it for a year. Like Ronald D. Moore is a good example of someone who wrote one of my favorite episodes of the season, which we'll talk about, the Dax one.
Yeah, the romance episode.
And Ronald D. Moore had also done some of the movies or helped with some of the movies. So like he's a pretty seasoned Star Trek writer at this point, and he's had time to sit with and figure out the dynamics of Deep Space Nine and how it's different. And then I think the other thing that's happening is all the people who want to do kind of like the Star Trek TOS style thing probably went to Voyager.
Yeah.
And the people who are left are people who've like been in the muck of Deep Space Nine.
They want to do this,
the world, and they want to do this. And now they've got somebody at the helm who also wants to do this. And
Right.
so they're like, hell yeah, let's do this. So it's really fascinating to see that take place. And that's just a dynamic that is only really going to occur when you have multiple television shows within the same franchise, where those TV shows are operating on somewhat different timelines. They have different priorities. And so you see like differing artistic sensibilities develop with regard to what people think Star Trek could or should be or look like. And so it feels like here at the beginning of season 4 is when we see most clearly this crystallized understanding of Deep Space Nine is this.
Hmm.
And there's like a clarity of vision here that's clear from the very first episode that carries through all the episodes we watched here that I
Right.
think make it a really excellent experience.
Yeah, Ari Stephen Barry's an interesting figure. If you read about him, he also looks awesome. He's still alive. He still posts semi regularly. So, he's got a purple beard or a purple goatee, which is badass.
Mhm.
And he also was the driving force behind What We Left Behind, which was the DS9 documentary that came out a few years ago,
Mm.
referring to the name of the series finale, What You Left Behind, I think it is.
Mhm.
Regardless, really interesting figure. And yeah, it definitely shows that they started to hand the show off by this point to somebody who cares about not only the characters, but what happens to them and what carries through from storyline to storyline, and wanted to build a sort of broader picture of what DS9 could be. And you start to see
Mhm.
that ambition take shape in this season, which is frankly fantastic.
Yeah. And to make the Babylon 5 comparison a little bit, I think up to this point, Deep Space Nine was kind of trying to accommodate a lot of different opinions on what Star Trek should be.
Yeah.
Um, and what we always thought was, the great virtue of Babylon 5, which also must have made it incredibly hard to make, is you
Hmm.
essentially have J. Michael Straczynski's vision.
Yeah.
It's like one of the few TV shows that's that expansive and that long that one person writes most of, and so you can say this guy is like the auteur of this TV show.
Yeah.
Um, so Deep Space Nine is able to get into its or not Deep Space Nine. Babylon 5 is able to get into its groove of this kind by the time you get to season 2, um, with the Coming of Shadows. Once JMS has figured out like how to make a TV show, and
Yeah.
he's like, okay, I think I know how to do this now. And Deep Space Nine takes a little bit longer because they're building a different kind of Star Trek show out of the Star Trekkiness. And now, okay, here we are, and we figured out what it is. And funnily enough, it kind of looks a lot like Babylon 5. It kind of turns out that that's a pretty good type of show to do.
Yeah.
Um, which is interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's a show that takes place on one space, which is good for
Mhm.
set design and budgeting. It's the same rotating cast of characters who all have conflicting relationships, and every pairing makes something unique. These are just like what makes a good ensemble show generally that can be like easily
Mhm.
replicated and redone a lot. So it's not just like they're copying, but also like they both happen to land on the same very good skeleton of a TV show.
Mhm.
Do you want to talk about the episodes?
I would love to talk about the episodes. Yeah, let's do that.
Brilliant. So again, folks, this, as you can see, is probably a longer episode. We will be taking a break partway through. We encourage you to take breaks. We'll be delineating verbally, like when we talk about a different episode. So spoilers abound like that, but also spoilers for all the episodes that we watched. Nothing further than that. Magellan and I think, have anything major spoiled beyond what we've seen here. So we're still as fresh as can be. So pace yourself with this one, y'all, because we're going to do the same. First up, we have the two-parter, The Way of the Warrior, which introduces our boy Worf to DS9. He is brought there as sort of a liaison between the Klingons and everybody on DS9, especially like dealing with the Federation, dealing with the Dominion, dealing with all of that. They need a Klingon who they can work with because the Klingons seem to be in a really weird space. And so it's about that. It's about Dax and Kira doing a holographic sexy massage. This one has a ton of going on. I do think that it all pretty well coheres pretty freaking well. I think the biggest thing we got to say is Michael Dorn being back is a delight. We had already heard that the show gets better when Worf is here, and it's accurate. The main reasons for that are, again, he has good sort of relationships with everybody here. He gets along or doesn't get along with everybody in meaningful ways. It gives us way more Klingon Empire stuff, which I absolutely love to see. And it seems to be building something really fascinating with how the Klingons, which were introduced to TOS as, this like foreign antagonistic race who are all about war and conflict, and, TNG deepened and fleshed out that relationship. And now DS9 is like, well, what do we do with the pieces of what we set up? We've been setting up who the Klingons are. And I think a lot of the Klingon stuff does give you have sort of an advantage understanding it if you watch TNG. Hearing all these different names and titles and things, it helps a lot. Yeah, I think that this episode also sort of serves as like a soft repilot. I think bringing on Worf 100%. As somebody who's like, okay, what is going on here? Why do you guys do things? Gives us a lens with which to view everything on DS9 from a fresh perspective. So what did you think?
Yeah, it's 100% agree. Worf, I was thinking about it and thinking about what is it that makes Worf such a great addition to the show? Because when I first heard that was happening, in my head, it's like, oh, okay, I get it. Maybe the ratings aren't great. We got to bring a character that everybody knows. And maybe that's part of what's going on here. By this point, Worf's been in a couple of the movies, and he even pays lip service to that. He's like, the Enterprise blew up, which, come on, man, they blow that Enterprise up a bunch of those movies. They're gonna make another one.
Yeah, every movie,
but it's okay. So there is, I'm sure, something to that of people being like, whoa, did you hear Worf is in this show? I gotta go check it out. But like you're saying, he is also just a crucial addition to the ensemble that makes a ton of sense for how they want to develop the broader story. Because what makes a good Deep Space Nine character is there's somebody who's connected to the factions who are like playing in this war, right?
Yeah.
Sisko isn't just a Starfleet officer. He's someone who was very negatively affected by the Borgification of Captain Picard, and that's like deep within his sense of self. He is impacted by these larger conflicts in a way that makes him a perfect kind of leader for this moment. You've got Kira, who's connected to the Bajorans. Dax lets us explore Trill stuff sometimes. Bashir, I don't know what Bashir's doing, but he's just a fun guy. He's a doctor. You gotta have a doctor on the ship.
So horny, he's gonna pass out.
Yeah. O'Brien was a really great addition to Deep Space Nine because he has this existing animus towards the Cardassians. And so he's kind of, we can talk about his appearance in some of these episodes. He's got this distrustful stance towards some of the aliens that we meet. And Worf feels like he's coming in really in the mold of somebody like Odo or Quark even, or Garrick, where it's somebody whose allegiance is ultimately to the ensemble and to our main characters, but they feel a sense of duty to a faction outside of Starfleet as well, and maybe even feel a kind of longing to still be considered a part of the society that they once called home.
Right.
So in that way, Worf like completely, very easily slots in to what it is that we're doing here and gives us an opportunity to look at the Klingons and think about how they're dealing with the shifting astropolitics of this war without kind of oversimplifying them from the human perspective as like, oh, these freaking Klingons, they love war so much and now they're warring again. Worf is actually able to go talk to them and be like, why are you warring so much right now? What's the deal?
What are you getting out of this?
Yeah, why would you do that? So he's great. And I don't think you could have picked a better TNG cast member to bring back to be a regular on Deep Space Nine. I don't think anybody else really enriches the show in that way, in the way that Worf does.
Yeah, my only other gut guess would have been like Data, but the thing about Data
Mhm.
is he works so good with Picard, and also like works with the sort of like questions that TNG wanted to answer, thinks about
Mhm.
humanity. But like we already, DS9 is a lot more about like living with what humanity does to itself and understanding that like we are destroying ourselves and we need to try to minimize that. I think there are plenty of
Mhm.
comparisons to be made about the Dominion War and its like connection to obviously the war on terror, but also just because it's relevant in what we were talking about earlier, but like the climate crisis, this idea that like we know this thing is coming,
Mhm.
it's telling us it's coming. Can we please stop fighting each other and do something about it? No? Okay, well, you fucked around and found out. It's basically what has
Mhm.
started happening here.
Mhm.
Yeah, there are just so many like little seeds planted in this one. It's kind of astonishing. I just went ahead and bolded all my notes in that just this episode about like these are things I wanted to bring up so that we keep a sort of tab on them. And you know, ultimately like, why I'm really enjoying this Ira Stephen Bear era of DS9 is no matter how story heavy the series gets, they always relate it back to why does it matter to the people on the station? Why does it
Yes,
matter to
100%.
Cisco and Worf and Kira and company? Because they're who we're seeing this through the lens of. We don't see the conflict on Earth until we go there. We don't see the Dominion until they show up on DS9.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
it's
and
it's a good lens to have.
it seems like there's a concerted effort. You described The Way of the Warrior as a soft relaunch of the series, which I felt the same way about it. This really feels like it's designed as, hey, you've heard about Deep Space Nine, right? Here's a great place to start. We're gonna do a bunch of these two-hander scenes to show you these two characters feel this way about each other. They get along or they don't get along. Here's a philosophical difference that they have, that
Right.
is kind of the core of when they hang out and talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna have Miles and Julian, hang out and flirt with each other. We're gonna have Odo and Garrick have coffee together, and
And
Odo's
flirt with
like
each other.
refilling the coffee cup and flirt with each other. We're gonna have Quark and Garrick talking about root beer and how it reminds them of the Federation. They hate the Federation, they hate Starfleet, but it's all they got. And they're also gonna flirt with each other.
Uh-huh.
Uh Kira and Dax are gonna be in, a sauna program with some shirtless men, and then those guys are gonna leave the room and they're gonna flirt with each other and
It's all
talk
there.
about like Dax loves imagining, Kira can't imagine,
Yeah.
doesn't have much of an imagination. It's like a bunch of these little two-person scenes that are just so well done and like you're saying, ground us in there's a lot going on outside. There's a lot of change that's happening in the larger context of the society. And the reason we care is because these characters care
Yeah.
and it affects them. Yeah.
So let's talk about a couple of things that have changed as we go down this one.
Yeah.
Small details. Cisco has shaved his head. He's keeping the goatee and he's
Looks
keeping a
good.
shaved head. I think it looks fantastic.
Looks
Um,
good.
I think that Avery Brooks is a very handsome man, and
Mhm.
it's so interesting that when we watched the DS9 pilot all those years ago, the first thing that struck me was the way that Avery Brooks delivers lines. I just didn't get it at the time. I didn't lock in with it. I didn't appreciate this sort of like
Mhm.
Shakespearean actor style. Same thing I felt with Picard when we started TNG. It's like, why you talk funny like that, Mister? Yeah, part of it is like they always hire Star Trek captains who come from Shakespeare. That's like the style of acting that they choose to pull. And
Mhm.
I think there's a humanity to the sort of like how do I phrase this exactly right? The way that Brooks plays Cisco is somebody who like chooses his words extremely carefully and says them in a way
Mhm.
that's like every one of these you considered. No
Mhm.
word goes unnecessary. He's not an kind of guy. Even if this wasn't a scripted TV show, he doesn't seem like somebody
Mhm.
who would like hesitate. He's very confident and chooses his words carefully. So I continue to love that, and I find that, especially how that interacts with his stresses and anxieties this season, to be really
Mhm.
great and fascinating as a sort of like update to how we feel about Cisco here.
Mhm.
So we got the shaved head, we got the updated theme song, which you guys heard up top. Magellan is not a fan of it. He's shaking his head on the video version. Tell me why you don't like it.
No. Look, I want to apologize to the original version of the theme song. All the times that I made fun of how long it is and it's boring, and I, make some popcorn while it's on or whatever. They sped this up 50% and added a ton of instruments to it, and it sounds so busy. Like, just relax. You didn't make it better. You just kind of made it louder and faster.
Yeah.
And whatever, I get it. Now it's over quicker and we can go into the show. And it was my fault for complaining about it at all.
Do you like the visuals of it at least? They got the Defiant in there now, the little Defiant pulling into the station. That part's cool.
Yeah, it's fine. It's like the same to me.
Yeah.
I could see someone seeing that and being like, whoa, that's cool.
Me. That's me.
Yeah.
I like the Defiant now.
I'm more of a fan of the Babylon 5 thing. Like, when it's a new season, we have a new narration with new clips.
Failed.
Yeah, like that's the shit I want. I want it to be a thing that I can. Her name was Xena.
That's
what I like.
You want a narrated theme. Okay.
Yeah, or like Buffy season 1, like, in every generation there's a Slayer.
Yeah.
And then the song's cool. It shows everybody in the cast. Like, that's what I want. If you're not going to give me that, then just don't give me anything. I get it. It's Star Trek. Star Trek doesn't do that.
It's this. I said this the first time we heard it, and the first time we discussed it. I love the energy of, okay, we're here. Let's take a breath. Here's the station. Let's pull in.
Mm-hmm.
The Define pulls in the way that we, the viewer, pull in. And let's be here. Let's like kind of, it's sort of like it's a grounding. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like a guided meditation. Like, let's take a breath. Let's think about it. And here we are. We're on DS9. This is the present for us.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I like about the theme. I think the new version is a little bit busy. I agree for sure. I think I like listening to it more though. I think it's not as catchy. It doesn't resolve in my head as the Phantom Menace theme the way that the other one did every time. But that's fine. I think it's okay. I don't have a controversial opinion on it. Continuing threads though, what's going on with Cassidy Yates, dude? Do you know? Is this one of the things you spoiled for yourself?
No, I don't know.
Okay, what do you think is happening with Cassidy Yates then?
Something's
up, buddy.
There were a few performances throughout this pilot or not pilot, because you know what I mean. It's the first episode of the season.
Yeah,
there were a few performances throughout this episode that made me wonder if everyone's just being directed a little bit poorly. I don't remember who the director of this episode was. Way of the Warrior. But there were a lot of line deliveries where it's like, you're not going to give them another take on that?
James L. Conway on this one.
James L. Conway. Did you do other?
I worked on some pretty good TNGs.
Directing. Justice, The Neutral Zone, Frame of Mind. Duet, Necessary Evil. Okay. Like, I guess this person has the bona fides that maybe I'm wrong about that, but there were just some line deliveries that were strange. So I could not tell if she was just delivering lines in a strange way or if I'm supposed to be suspicious of Cassidy Yates, but I was.
Yes.
Because there was the whole bit where she's getting attacked by the Klingons and he's like, is everybody safe? Sisko's like, is everybody safe or whatever? And she's like, yeah.
Yeah,
we're safe.
Yeah.
What? What's your deal? Why are you being so weird?
It's super strange, and I agree. I'm like, is that Penny Johnson or Penny Johnson Harold? I think she goes by now. Gerald. Or is she being manipulated? Is she working for somebody?
Is it a changeling? I was wondering.
It's so fascinating that this episode started me on a path of paranoia about everyone, because the end of last season is like, well, people can be changelings. And then that paranoia the show wants you to feel in general, because when we get to the 2-part like Changelings on Earth arc, and Sisko briefly suspects his dad, you're like, I also suspect your dad. And now I feel bad for having said that, because what biases did I bring to this situation? And if I was Sisko's dad, how would I feel about my son thinking that I'm a murderer? Like, just weird. This started me on a really interesting path of paranoia. But like, I truly think that Yates is either setting Sisko up, or is working for someone, or doesn't know that she's working for someone. Similar to how Red Squad didn't know that what they were doing was bad.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna we're gonna do something with her plot at some point, right? Like later in the season, she takes this job. She's moving supplies for Bajor or whatever.
Yeah.
They're positioning her to have more of a plot centered around her, or she's an actor in it in some way. Um, but yeah, I think part of the confusion for me is just we haven't gotten much of Casty Yates at all up to this point. She's really only ever been in scenes substantially where she's with Cisco.
Cisco, yeah.
And she was introduced to us as Jake was like, I found somebody for you. So she's only ever kind of existed in that context. So again, it's hard for me to judge. Are you acting different than you normally do? Or is the show wanting me to feel suspicious or what? I don't know. We'll see where it goes. But definitely there was some doubt in my mind with some of the ways that she said certain things.
Like, are you Catherine Sakai or are you Elizabeth Lockley? Are you here to be related to the man, or are you here to be not related to the man? What defines your relationship to him?
Whoa.
Yeah, I cooked that one for a little while. We're also setting up that there's a bit of a budding romance between Jadzia, Dax, and Worf. I love this. I'm firmly in support of this. In the intervening months, there has been a beautiful anonymous episode where a fan called in to Chris and they talked about DS9 for a while, and there was a minor spoiler about this stuff for me, unfortunately. But I'm excited to see it because Worf liking Dax means that he is queer. He is a queer man. You can't deny that anymore. Sorry, I don't make the rules about how gender and sexuality work, but that is what that means. Because he's fascinated by her joie de vivre, her knowledge of different races and cultures, including his, which matters to him a lot. And there's just something there. Dax has a sort of like, she enjoys his vivaciousness, his energy, his like commitment to certain things. I see it. I see the lights lighting up.
I think Worf is kind of turned on by the Curzon aspect of it too. Like, ooh, somewhere in your past, like you could have been my commanding officer. Like an older guy commands me.
It's a little hot. They do cool things with Dax this season.
I think he's into that part.
Yeah, and I think you know, the trans allegory is still there for sure. We'll talk a lot about that later. And I'm just excited to see this budding relationship develop. I'm so curious where it goes. Yes. So pin in that. Worf and Odo have a bit of tension here. Mostly just want to talk about how they have different views of duty and obligation. So Worf is, they're both like, we joked about this pre-pod, but we're like, they're both different types of autistic, right? Because they both agree of like, we love organization and order, which is why we're both cops. But one of us believes in a sort of like law-based order, and one of us believes in a sort of like, you know, I get the job done at any cost. That's Odo. Like, the important thing is that the job gets done. I don't care how legal it is. I get it done. That's why he keeps tabs on Quark and lets him do things. Whereas Worf is like, Quark is a criminal. You should be arresting him. So that's interesting. Pin on that.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, just like, let's take a moment to see what happened with the Klingons in this one. They broke the Khitomer Accords. They are presumably going to try to go to war with Cardassia. Under the guise of going to war with the Dominion. We think there's Dominion on Cardassia. Is that just a front for them to go to war because they have problems with Cardassians? Maybe. We're not sure on that.
Yeah.
What I appreciate about Worf, though, as the intermediary, is mostly it's Cisco being like, wow, these guys are angry. And then Worf's like, and then they yell something in Klingon, and Worf goes, yeah, they just said they want to wear your skin as a prize, dude. They actually fucking hate you. They, like, despise you. That's what that meant. So that translation, that was funny. The Khitomer Accords, a concept that we've heard about since TOS, like just the peace treaty between the first major war of Star Trek, the Federation and Klingon War, has been broken. There's no longer a peace treaty in place. They could go to war whenever they want. Although they surrender at the end of this two-parter, they do say we're not giving up the territory that we took from the Cardassians. So now the Klingons have Cardassian territory in hand.
Something that's so brilliant about this half of the season, starting here and then coming to fruition in the two-parter later on, is the founders are trying to invade the Alpha Quadrant. Seemingly, the Dominion as a whole is trying to do that and take it over. That's sort of their MO, and that's what they've said to Odo. We don't see them do anything in these 13 episodes necessarily,
Mm-hmm.
but we see the impact of people believing that they will do something or using their existence as a political tool to advance other ends. So the founders don't need to sow much discord because just the threat of their existence causes these different civilizations to act irrationally and play on like their worst instincts. So you have the Klingons doing things that are very familiar to us, I think, in the modern day, of saying like, oh well, we got to have strong borders, right?
Right.
We gotta be on the borders and making sure that we're checking everybody for if they're supposed to be here or not. And it's like, no, we don't actually want you to do that. We're not asking you to do that. That's a pretty harmful thing that uh immiserates everybody in our society for you to act that way on the border. And then it's like, oh well, we got to go into, this other place to instill order and democracy or whatever. I mean, they don't say democracy, but
That's what they mean. Sorry, is your cat's
yeah,
okay? That was loud.
I think that's a baby outside.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was a child. Cool.
Yeah, that's a crying baby
Oh, okay,
outside.
okay. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, that's fine.
But it feels very like we got to bring peace to the Middle East almost. Like
Yeah.
we got to go to Cardassia and make sure that we're in control of it, and then we'll just pick up some territory along the way because it wasn't ever really about democracy. It was about oil. Like we're just gonna
Bingo.
keep a couple planets for ourselves.
Yeah, that line's so important right at the end when they're like, okay, I guess we do surrender, but we're keeping everything we took, and you're not taking that back from us. Also, we broke
Yeah.
our peace accord, so you have no reason not to fight back anymore.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah, the real life parallels are
Yeah.
definitely there. And yeah, it's great. Last thing I wanted to talk about with this one, it is not lost on us that Cisco and Worf are both being played by black men, African American men, I believe.
Yeah.
And
Right.
this scene at the end, it's a tight, slow zoom on Cisco's face where he's talking to Worf and he's saying, you need to face your fears and you can't run from them. It's important that you engage with Klingon society. I know you've been exiled, but like they still matter to you. And what your duty is here on DS9 matters. Just like after my wife died, I also found duty on DS9. So for both of them, this station is sort of a place to rediscover what matters to you and commit to it and not shy away or you want to be an active presence in your own life, which I think is a very resonant piece of text for father figures who they both are. They're also both exactly black fathers, which I think you wrote in your notes. So it's all there. It's not lost on us. Michael Dorn and Avery Brooks both doing that thing.
Yeah, it's an amazing scene where Worf is like, I think I'm thinking of quitting, and Cisco's like, yeah, I hear you, but we need you here. We need your voice, your perspective, and you stepping away from this leadership role is actually not going to like help you escape your problems. It's just going to make it harder for you to do that. So anyway, you want to become a red shirt and learn how to command? And Worf's like, all right, yeah, that sounds good to me.
I guess we won't die secret
love
anymore. The world only spins forward. More life, the great work begins, as Tony Kushner once famously said in Angels of America. Yeah, it's all there, and it's a great setup. So this is, I think, an S tier episode.
I agree.
Unbelievable.
Any
we got
other
a 90-minute pilot, a 90-minute premiere, and we still gave it an S tier.
I have a couple other notes from it, just random things that I enjoyed.
All right.
Cassidy Yates gives Cisco a hat from her brother's baseball team. If we never go and see that baseball team, I will be upset.
We will riot. I need it.
Yeah, we gotta go.
Oh, I went to my first hockey game a couple days ago. Speaking of live sports,
how was that?
Cool. It's cool. I really like watching hockey. I'm trying to watch more live sports. I've talked about this before. So I've now seen live soccer, women's soccer. I've seen live baseball. Speaking of this, and I've seen live hockey. And I think hockey might be the most like visually stimulating. Baseball was the best experience because it's so cozy at Fenway Park to just like watch a thing. But yeah, they gotta watch a freaking baseball game, man. Come on now.
That's fun. Bum 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 bum. Oh, I love O'Brien, with the way that he's reacting to Worf joining the crew, and he's just kind of like, "Yeah, that's my guy Worf. We used to work together. Everybody's watching him work." And O'Brien's like, "I told you, this guy's fucking great." I love that. I love I don't know, you just don't ever really get to see that in TV. Like one character being like, "Oh, I know this character from the old show, and now he's on the new show, and he's so good." Um, Worf gets to meet our favorite character, which is the dartboard, and show you what it looks like when Worf interacts
Does
with
the
it
dartboard?
by
Yeah.
throwing the dart way too hard and basically breaking the thing. So that was good. Um, I love Worf's interactions with Gowron and the way that he's feeling conflicted about whether to betray the Klingon scheme or not. And
Yeah.
then Gowron is like, "If you go against me, you'll have nothing." And Worf says, "Except my honor."
Accept my honor. Oh,
Fucking bar, so good.
such a bar.
Yeah. And I think that's what's at the heart of the best Worf episodes is when he has to make the choice and say, actually, the most honorable thing for me to do is to be true to myself and my own sense of what honor means instead of bending to what I'm being told I'm supposed to do in the name of like a false version of that honor.
Mm.
Um, and I think that's so cool that Worf's story is never about him like rejecting his Klingonness. It's about him saying, "Oh, you guys are rejecting Klingonness. Like you guys are doing this all wrong."
You, the Klingons, are doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes as somebody who's raised Middle Eastern, I see a lot of parallels. And someone who's, I'm also the child of immigrants. So like I see some aspects of my own experience in Worf where it's like, okay, I love what you guys do, but there are problems with it. But that doesn't mean I want to abandon it. It just means you guys need to do it differently. And I need to
Mhm.
bring to my future people, whether it's the future of Klingons or just your Alexander, his son, I want them to be better at this because it's good. It's worth maintaining, even though it has many fundamental problems.
Mhm.
It's all there.
Yeah. Garrick's really fun in this episode. Cisco is able to communicate what's going on to the Cardassians by having Garrick come in to do measurements on him for a new outfit. Such a good scene. And they're just talking openly about military stuff that Garrick shouldn't be overhearing. I thought that was a great moment. Garrick standing shoulder to shoulder with Ducat was a fun
Love
scene in
Ducat.
the hallway there, and
Mhm.
them shooting all those Klingons together. Good time.
I want to say give Garrick a gun, but I believe they did give, in fact, to Garrick a gun.
No, and he used that gun.
Yeah.
He was shooting a lot of people actually.
Yes.
Yeah. So fun, good, great start to the season all around.
S tier. Put it on the board.
S tier for sure.
The next one is 403. If we're continuing our numbering structure here, this is The Visitor. This was a much hyped episode for me, at least, because it guest stars Tony Todd as an aged up version of Jake Sisko, who is recounting the story of his life to a young fan of his named Melanie. He's grown up. He lives alone in New Orleans, and he's a writer. He was an accomplished writer, and he's now retired. And in explaining his life to her and why he quit writing, we also learn about this sort of timey-wimey tragedy that when Jake was young at the time of the present day of DS9, he saw his father seemingly disappear, seemingly die, and dealt with the grief of that. This episode is absolutely about grief and carrying on someone's legacy. But he couldn't get rid of the memory and the image of Sisko in his head because he started to appear to him throughout his life over and over, even as he developed a relationship and married. He kept seeing his father and would keep trying to eventually bring back the DS9 crew, go on the Defiant, and try to recreate the scenario that lost him his father until finally Avery Brooks and Tony Todd have one of the greatest scenes in Star Trek. And it does choke me up to fucking try to describe it. Cisco basically has to tell Jake, like, you need to live your life and let go of me. Your father will leave you someday. I have left you. Build. All I'm asking for you is to build a life for yourself. And then he does, and then the timeline sort of resets, and we can allow him to age from there. This episode made me call my dad. I knew it. Like, a couple months ago, one of my favorite writers, Angelica Bastia, and she has a great Substack. I highly recommend you look it up. She wrote about this episode and Candyman after Tony Todd passed away in 2024. And one of the things that she wrote was obviously about, not obviously, but she's a Black woman, and so she was writing about this sort of like history of Black fathers in television, and the fact that the Cisco Jake relationship is so important to DS9, and to recenter it so early in season 4 is amazing. I think what they do, we didn't talk about this much earlier, but with Jake and Nog specifically, like that, how them and their parents, that relationship has evolved throughout the season, is like the gooey caramel center of all this other chaos happening. And all the performances in this one are stellar, especially Tony Todd. It's that voice, that unforgettable voice that he has. It's the heartbreak in describing to this young girl, Melanie, like, I know that this is bad. I know what I'm telling you doesn't make sense. And I just can't stop thinking about my dad. I think that is, to a lot of people, how grief works. We watched The Leftovers on Chatz a couple years ago. We know that grief is something that doesn't end linearly. And in this episode, it's literally about how does grief not end linearly. So I talked about that with my dad a little bit. He had some really nice comments about, like, my dad lost a couple of his siblings in the past couple of years. And so he's been kind of like dealing with a similar, like, how do I strengthen the relationship in my present with the family I have, and also acknowledge and honor the people who have passed. So, yeah, I was a fucking wreck after this one, dude. And that was a lot. And, I want you to tell me what you thought about it.
Yeah, I cried. It got me, of course. This, you remember, the thing that really used to get me in high school was there was that
the Charizard story, or the Dragonite.
Dragonite, like, it was like one of those superimposed impact bold text over a picture of Dragonite, and it's like a dad who just wants to hang out with the kid who doesn't have time for him or something. So, like, dad stuff is gonna get me, of course. And this completely wrecked me. It's so I took note in the first episode of, wow, we're getting all these characters and all these kind of two-person scenes, but we don't really see Jake in the first episode of the season. And I thought that was strange. No Jake. But it's because they had to make it a whole thing here. And I really liked what you were saying there, that the Jake Nog relationship, it's not just a fun diversion or a way to do kind of, oh, these rascals are getting into things, subplots, or like, uh-oh, what's going on at school today. It is, in many ways, they are kind of the most consequential characters in the series, because they're showing us what the next generation is going to take from all of this, right? When you grow up in the midst of the conflicts that we're witnessing here, you see the mistakes that the Federation is about to make, or that Starfleet's making, or the Ferengi are making, and you try to forge and build something better. What does that look like? And so I thought it was an amazing choice to make this whole episode centered on Jake, and centered on Jake in a way as if to say, like, here's what happens when that goes awry, and when Jake, like, it isn't able to complete his childhood, so to speak, and has to live with, like, the dream that his father created and all of the things that his father built, and watch them fall apart before they can come to fruition and be the world that he wanted to live in and to make happen. And I think it also kind of speaks to the next step that needs to happen in Cisco's raising of Jake, which is like, it's great that you admire me, and also these are things that exist within you. Like, you don't need me to build the world that you want. And to watch in this episode Jake go through his life and be followed around by grief in a way that he just can't escape, is so heartbreaking. Um, to see him revert back to being a kid every time his dad poofs back into his life, and like that first scene where he comes back for the first time they realize that he's actually coming back and he's in the med bay. It's been a year and Cisco is like, "How have you been?" Jake just starts sobbing because it's like, "You were dead." Like, "What do you mean, how have I been? I've been broken. Like, I have not been okay." Um, so this episode, I think, does an incredible job of showing this really complicated idea, which is that Cisco's great. He's been building great things, and also that doesn't necessarily mean that those things are going to, like, last and ensure that Jake has a great life, because grief is fucking hard,
Yeah.
and it's this personal journey. And I don't think that Jake, like, really gets over his grief. He just kind of decides, like, well, this timeline was bad and I'm just going to kill myself so that we can do a reset and a different version of me can have a chance at a different life.
Right.
Um and that's so tragic and beautiful, and Tony Todd crushes it. Like, absolutely does an amazing job. I was reading in the background information,
Yeah.
he
Talk
said
about
that
this.
he had lost, an aunt who was a caregiver, helped raise him, uh, like, shortly before doing this episode. So this episode was a way for him to process his own grief, and that comes out in the episode. Like, you can tell that he's really feeling this and
Yeah.
cherishing the opportunity to tell this story. And Avery Brooks does an amazing job of showing the guilt of a father who's like, "No, why? Like, I understand that you're sad, but I want you to have a good life. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want you to be preoccupied about bringing me back. That's not gonna fix things for you. I just want you to be happy and do the
Yeah.
things that are
Because
meaningful to you."
Jake,
Yeah.
Jake essentially sabotages his relationship with his wife in doing this, and
Yeah.
she ends up leaving him because he's so obsessed. And it's like, that's when Cisco has to be like, dude, all I actually want you to do is to stop thinking about me. Please stop. Like, please
Right.
move past this. And he just can't. To fundamentally not be able to do that is very human, very very human.
Yeah, and I think this allegory makes literal the kind of survivor's guilt of, well, I understand that this person would want me to be happy, but the fact is, as soon as you stop grieving and you forget about them,
They
they're
disappear.
gone.
Yeah,
And there's a guilt to that of, I need to hold on to the grief to continue to make this person exist.
mm-hmm.
Um, that's totally understandable. I've lost a parent. Like, I know what that feels like. Um, and it takes a long time to convince yourself that it's okay to, like, forget a little bit and live your life, because otherwise there are two deaths that have happened, right? It's the parent that you lost, and it's the life that you're giving over to grieving that loss. Um, yeah, like, what the fuck?
It's the
This
that
episode's
the
so good.
unbelievable. That's the Hemingway quote, right? Every man has two deaths buried in the ground, and the last time someone says his name.
Wow.
Yeah, it's true, guys, and call your dad if you have him, and if you have a good relationship with him, because holy stromboli,
Yeah.
the Visitor is just peak Trek sci-fi as metaphor storytelling, peak
Mhm.
grief storytelling, things that come up on Chatz here a ton. Incredible acting, the best guest performance I've seen in years.
Mhm.
And yeah, you can find there's a short clip on YouTube of Tony Todd being asked at a convention exactly what you were just talking about, where someone was like, how did you feel? Like, did you know going into doing The Visitor that, like, this was going to be a big one for you? He basically talks about, like, it was a weird period for my career. I was kind of like taking what roles I could, and then I lost the woman who raised me, and this script hit my desk, and I was like, I feel like she's asking me to do this. Like she's almost like requesting that I resolve this grief by doing this episode. So we will see Tony Todd again in DS9 in a different role. But for now, I think this is like genuinely one of his best performances I've ever freaking seen. It's like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Up there. And again, it's just, the Tony Todd of it all can't be understated. Remember when he was on Xena and like what was otherwise kind of a dumb episode, and he still brought like emotional pathos and weight to it? It's like, the dude just had a talent.
Yeah, no, he's fantastic.
So this is an F tier. No, this is like as high of an S tier as it gets. I don't even know what to tell you. Breathless.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Can
we talk about how good Nog is in this one? Older Nog.
Oh, good. Nog is so good. Adult Nog, like giving a toast, and oh my god, what a charmer! What a sweet lad.
Especially because it's still Aaron Eisenberg. It's still the actor who plays Nog, but just like with some wrinkly makeup on. He doesn't like get taller or anything. Yeah. So, but he's become nicer. He's calmed down. He enjoys food. He enjoys like life. It's
he does an excellent job of the subtlety of Nog. Same empathy, same love for his friends. We're gonna dial up the maturity just a little bit, and you don't even need to put the wrinkles on him, and you see Nog, you say, oh my god, you're 15 years older than the last time I saw you. And Tony Todd doing the reverse, where he's playing, Tony Todd is so much taller than Nog is.
Yes.
But he's able to play a version of Jake where you're looking at him and it's like, okay, I know you're an adult man, but you look like you're 16 and you're still kind of carrying that interrupted childhood throughout your life.
Yeah.
So the way that they play off each other is excellent. In those scenes where it's like adult Nog, who's the Starfleet officer coming to visit. Yeah, so good.
Enjoys the food, enjoys the restaurant. Yeah, this is where you get the seeds of the New Orleans restaurant, which is still open. I love that scene where the girl comes and she's like, yeah, it's still open. I went. She's such an interesting portrait of a fan. She's like, I read all 2 of your books. I went to New Orleans to meet your grandfather, or to go to the restaurant that your grandfather runs. I ate there. Like, she's a fascinating picture of like, I want so badly to somehow understand you and like appreciate your work, and there's so little of it that I'll dig anywhere. I will travel to Earth to see where your grandfather, and the picture of you and the picture of your, certificate and manuscript is there, and it's amazing, and the food is so good. That's all I have though, because you didn't write more. Like my fandom, the way that grief can't resolve, her like fandom can't resolve. She meets him hoping to get some sort of answer of like, you're the reason I became a writer. I'm struggling. I need something to write about. And he has that line early on where she's like, you're a really good writer. And he's like, you should read more books. Which is so good. Oh man, I could talk about this episode all freaking day. All day long, baby.
Yeah, I loved that dynamic of it, of the fan who has developed this understanding of the person, that they love their work and they want to have greater insight into them. I couldn't really get past the practicalities of like, she showed up to his house in the middle of the night during a rainstorm. Like,
can I stay here? It's
like that was strange. Didn't make sense. I wish they had worked a little harder to make the setup better, but I guess it was fine. But she did a good job. Fun fact, that is Garrick's daughter.
Oh,
actor. Yeah, she is.
Wait, not Andrew's daughter, but the character of Garrick's daughter. Wait, does Garrick have it?
The actor playing Melanie is the daughter of the actor who plays Garrick.
Got it. Thank you. That's what I was trying to understand. Because I was like, wait, we saw, but that was Gul Dukat's daughter.
Yeah, right. Different daughter.
So now we've talked about the 2 absolute bangers that open the season. Let's start going a little faster through these next couple.
Okay.
We have Hippocratic Oath, which is 404. Let's see. What's the gist of Hippocratic Oath? We finally slow down. The episode's finally just like become okay again. Renee Auberjonois actually directed this one.
There is the Jem'Hadar one.
Yes. Oh, they're a Jem'Hadar. They capture us. They're dying of addiction to a drug, or Ketracel White. Bashir feels the urge to heal one of them, or feels like he has to. It's his role as a healer, but these are their captors and part of the Dominion, so that's bad. O'Brien's like, you should just let them die. It gets more complicated than that, because the one that does want help ends up becoming a pariah among the Jem'Hadar. I thought this one was solid. This is a cool like commitment to the Jem'Hadar storyline, and continues what we saw last season, where we had the Jem'Hadar who came and was like they were trying to raise him, or Odo was trying to raise him. Yeah,
and they bring that up in this one too. Yeah.
Yes, they do. I think this is also a cool like it's weird that this has one of the gayest lines of the season, because it's also where Bashir and O'Brien's relationship splinters a little, but at the same time, I'll get the funny part out of the way before we talk about the serious stuff. Is it Bashir does the log this time at the beginning, and then O'Brien says, "Why can't Keiko be more like?" And he's talking to Bashir. They're talking about like, why can't my wife just be more like? He clearly just wants to say, "Be more like you," and then he tweaks it and says something arguably gayer. He says, "Why can't she be more like a man?" Come on. It's right there. I'm just saying. And then they proceed to have the biggest argument of their career.
Yeah, and Bashir's even like, "Oh, you want to be married to a man?" or something like that. It's good. It's fun. They should kiss. They probably have kissed a lot, actually. I think this episode serves a couple functions. It's not as riveting as the last two, but the last two are like some of the best DS9 episodes we've seen so far, so that's not necessarily fair. But it does two things for us. One, I think it's because we had the episode where there was the child Jem'Hadar who essentially refused Odo's attempts to make him different than how he was designed to be.
Yep.
And the show is wanting to say, like, that doesn't mean that the Jem'Hadar are doomed to be the soldiers of the founders, right?
Yeah.
That just means that that particular individual made that choice, or maybe was too young to like fight against these kind of chemical impulses. But what the show's saying is like, it is still possible for the Jem'Hadar to make a different decision. So let's not fully dehumanize them or think of them as just these like faceless warriors. Because here's these guys who are aware of the fact that they are being forced into military servitude through this genetically engineered dependence on this drug. And it is biologically possible for one of them to develop the ability to produce the drug within their own body, and they don't need it to come from an external source. And there's a willingness among some of the Jem'Hadar to not be controlled by the Vorta or the founders. So I think that's really cool. And it introduces this conflict between O'Brien and Julian of, well, what is it we're trying to do here, right? Because for Bashir, it's like, well, it's just a good thing for us to, enable these different societies to self-determine. And O'Brien is coming from the perspective of, well, but they're pretty militaristic, and even if you separate them from those who are in control of them, they've developed a culture that's going to result in whatever. Obviously, O'Brien's perspective here is kind of fucked up, and he like blows up Bashir's attempts to help these people. And I don't come out of this thinking that O'Brien's reasonable, but I come out of it understanding how he could reach the conclusions that he reaches given his experiences.
Yeah.
And it helps to set up for us, okay, some people in Starfleet are primed to have very like fear motivated responses, and they're going to do things or make decisions where we're going to be like, whoa, why did you do that? And that comes back later in the season in a meaningful way.
Yes.
So even though I come out of this being like, O'Brien, why are you being such a dick?
We've seen O'Brien be like this though, even since TNG.
We've seen him be like this. It is in character for him, and it makes sense. And I think it helps set up some of the themes of the season.
Yeah, well said. A quick note I just remembered when watching this one. This is where, if you're watching the credits, they switch to an alphabetical cast listing as opposed to this weird, like, sometimes shows do the like highest billing first. Alexander Siddig's credit changed from his old credit of Siddig El Fadil to the new one of Alexander Siddig. According to him, the reason he altered his name here was because, quote, the other name said too much about what I wasn't. Siddig El Fadil is an important name. It is my name officially on my passport and one that I'll keep. But for an actor, it wasn't suitable. So I started again with half and half, which is more reflective of my character. As for Alexander, that was a name I pulled out of a hat. I just think that's really funny and also relevant to his culture. It's a common thing in Middle Eastern culture to kind of like take your father's name, and I think it's cool that Alexander Siddig was like, I want to have my own name and not just be someone else, have someone else's name. Worth bringing up because this is the first like Bashir heavy episode of the season. I love the Jem'Hadar though. I think it's really fascinating what they're doing with them here. I think sometimes the show can dip into the like, I don't know what the actual term for the trope is, but the no good Nazi trope. Like, do we help people who are objectively evil? Is that worth doing? And what they kind of accept is like, it's morally gray, which ties into the B plot in this one, by the way, just briefly. That is, Worf realizes Quark is doing war crimes and like working with a criminal, and he tries telling Odo, and Odo's like, we don't worry about Quark. I always keep tabs on Quark. It's fine. He's allowed to do that. This is the beginning of the like Worf and Odo tension. But at the end of the episode, it's revealed that Quark is working with this guy so that they can track him and take him down as part of a sting. And so he ruins it by, you know, letting his irrational side, or his rational side rather, take over. And at the end, you have Sisko being very parentalist to him and being like, you know, Worf, sometimes people are morally gray and you can't always fight people who seem bad. Just good little lesson for Worf that things are complicated, but very simplistic, not a complicated B plot.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty great episode to show. You know, Worf doesn't just come into the show being like, I understand how to get things done and the way that I do things is the right way to do things. They bring him in that way in the first one, saying, oh, who can talk to the Klingons? Somebody who's a Klingon, probably. Well, let's get a Klingon. But Worf's experiences in some ways represent things that he's going to have to unlearn in order to be effective in this environment. And Sisko sort of talks to him. He's like, how long were you a security guy? Worf's like, oh, 7 seasons. I mean, 7 years. And Sisko says, all right, that's not your job anymore. That you actually have no business doing that. I understand that it's old habits die hard, but stop. That's Odo's job. And I think that's such a fascinating, cool plot to put Worf in. The thing that you know best is not your thing.
Yeah.
You actually should not be doing it because you're going to make things worse.
Unlearn what you know.
Version,
yeah.
Right. And also your version of security, you are on board a military vessel, like a ship that's flying around and should only have Starfleet crew. This is a civilian populated space station. This is like a little society here. You're not a security guard on a submarine. You're a police officer in a small town. You're a mall cop. Yeah, exactly. And the rules are just different. And I thought that was really interesting. I liked that a lot.
Reminding us how different DS9 is from TNG, right?
Yeah.
This is the magic, folks. What do we rate this one? Low B, high A? Or high B, low A?
It's like a high B to me. Yeah.
Yeah. I think high B is good. Catcher Cell White is fun to say.
It is.
2 more before we hit our break. So let's talk about 4 or 5. This is Discretion, directed by LeVar Burton. He's back, guys. Fascinating episode. Kira wants to explore a Bajoran ship that she heard has been missing. A Cardassian ship with Bajoran rebels on it. The Cardassians are being weird about it, and they're like, we're going to come with you. We're actually going to send Gul Dukat, one of your worst enemies, with you. So the 2 of them go onto this ship, to recover this ship that has like slaves and stuff on it. That is our A plot. They discover that Gul Dukat has secret motives. He has a daughter who is the child of him and a mistress that he took with the Bajorans. So she's half Bajoran, half Cardassian, who's working in the mines. They eventually do find her after much exploring through the desert and arguing in the desert. And he's actually there to kill her because it would besmirch his reputation to leave her alive. She's sort of an embarrassment to him amongst the Cardassians. he struggles with that. Kira eventually convinces him not to kill her and allow her to escape. He's willing to take the hit to his reputation to be a good dad for once in his goddamn life. Meanwhile, in our B plot, Cisco deals with commitment issues with Cassidy Yates, which I think is kind of interesting. It's another one of those, like, this isn't complicated, but it is interesting. Briefly, just about the B plot, I like that Cassidy is like, I'll come to DS9, dude. I can work anywhere. Like, I can just work. And he's like, no, I don't think you should work with me. And he frames it as like a safety issue. Like, this place is hard to be on and people are bad and it's scary and you never know what's going to happen. But really, like, this guy's not ready to commit. This guy's not ready to be married again. He lost his wife on this station or on Wolf 359, like, only a couple years ago. And I just thought that was all interesting. And the fact that wasn't it like Jake and Nog who are like, we found a way for this to like work out. We like analyzed your stuff and it's actually okay.
Yeah, he kind of goes around. This plot is very straightforward, and I think Avery Brooks is just so good at acting that he makes it much more interesting than it really is.
Yeah.
The way that he's doing the scene with Cassidy Yates, and he's like, "Oh, that's a very big step.
Wow, that's huge.
I'm excited about it." He's really good at selling every line and the nuance underneath them. But he asks about Dax and Bashir's advice. Jake gives him probably the best advice, which is, oh, she wants to move here. Let her do it and just see what happens. But I love that. Yeah, Cisco's sort of like, well, this is adult stuff you wouldn't understand. And Jake's kind of like, no, it's pretty straightforward, Dad. You've got trauma, bro. And you're scared. It's cool. It's okay to be scared. But cut it out. Everything's fine. And then I did really enjoy the scene where he goes to apologize to Cassidy Yates and he's like, I think you should take that job. And she's like, oh, cool. I took it. I already did.
I love that.
Anyway, you can help me pick out a room when I get back. And he's like, okay, cool. He goes in for the kiss. And then she's like, just kidding. I'm not going to kiss you right now. Bye-bye. Such a fun scene.
I can't help but grin at it. On one hand, I'm like, Cisco deserves this. This is so good for him. And then on the other hand, I'm like, this is going to go so badly for someone.
Yeah, no, this is scary for sure.
I know this.
3 days away from retirement here.
Yep. How did you feel about the A plot here?
I really liked it. I thought it was great. I love Ducat. Anytime that his nasty little booty's on the screen, especially when he sits on a big spine and it hurts him so much. Ouchie.
How intimate, by the way, when Kira pulls that out, she's like from behind, like pulling a stick out of his butt. I'm like, are you kidding? Something's going on there. Thank you. LeVar Burton, I see what you did there. I got it.
Yeah. Yeah, them spending so much time together, I think, is really great. Because she hates him for completely understandable reasons.
He says early in the episode, and I quote, the occupation was actually good for Bajor because it made your people stronger.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's
she's like,
really
what?
Something. Yeah. Absolute nasty work. Yeah, Gul Dukat is a war criminal and a terrible, terrible person. And he's so entertaining also. So it's pretty fun to watch him and Kira play off of each other. Nerys, I should say, play off of each other. And to watch her begin to empathize with him and like him in spite of herself. And understand how somebody could love this guy, I think is really what she figures out by the end of it. Because she's kind of like, fuck you, I don't want to be on this mission with you. You're saying just the most racist shit you possibly could. And then they have that romantic cave scene where he tries to put the thing on his butt to give himself butt skin back, but it's not working. And they just start cracking up about him like bending over and showing his ass to her with the butt skin fixer, but it's not even on. It's so good.
I guess I should turn it on. I'm in pain. Whee!
Yeah. And then for her to see him make the choice of like, you know what? I'm going to lose my career and my credibility, and this is going to be really bad for me, but I love my daughter and I want to raise my daughter. That's just a cool character moment for them. Like is able by the end of this episode to be like, okay, I hate this guy and everything that he did, and also he's making different choices now, and this is more complicated for me.
Yeah.
And that's cool.
Gul Dukat, what's most fascinating about him is that he's complicated. Because if he was just evil, then it would be really easy for Kira to be like, well, I guess Cardassians are bad. I have a perfect example of one. He keeps entering my life, and he's obsessed with me for some reason, obsessed with my culture. And so much of this episode is them talking about their culture's history, right? Like going through the desert, being like, I remember when you guys, had these funeral rites, because all the Bajorans keep trackers on them so that they can have proper burials. But because he's also human, he has human qualities. She can't. It complicates her relationship to Cardassians in a really great way.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's, of course, Gul Dukat would have a Bajoran mistress. Like, of course,
that simply makes sense.
That makes sense. This is just how the nature of oppression works and can function. You're an oppressor, you're running concentration camps, you have some kind of attraction to the people you're oppressing, like that.
It's a power dynamic there.
It's about the power dynamic. And so it is really this complicated and fascinating thing where Kira's like, this isn't surprising to me. Many of the Cardassian occupiers had Bajoran mistresses. And also, there's some aspect of genuine love and affection here too. And I don't think you can fully separate that from the power dynamic necessarily. But I think what Kira is probably seeing in this is there is a future for reconciliation that's rosier than maybe she would have imagined to begin with.
Correct.
To think that like these two people in the midst of this occupation could have loved each other, or there could have been some version of love present in their relationship, and now there's this daughter. There's some kind of hope in that, which again is like real fucked up and complicated, but Kira's like willing to think about it. And I don't know, that's just cool. Like it's messy, it's not, I don't know, but yeah, you know?
It has to be messy. That's what makes this all interesting.
Yeah.
And it stays messy, right? And amongst all this messiness, there is still, there's the tragedy of his daughter being like, the thing that kept me alive was dreaming that you would rescue me, and now you're in front of me pointing a gun at me, like I have nothing to live for anymore. You almost feel like he could do it, but Kira does earlier say in the episode, if you kill your daughter, I'm going to kill you.
Right.
Which, coming from Kira Nerys, is not a joke. It's like an actual threat. No. It's entirely serious. My stray notes are there are 3 of them. Okay. I feel like a dermal regenerator would feel incredible. That's like having
yeah, definitely.
What are those like vibrating ball things that we all love? The thing that you put on your joints, it looks like a gun. Theragun. It's like an ultra Theragun, but that it actually fixes you. So good.
Yeah.
The best line from the Cassidy Yates plot is when she says, he's like, you should take the job. And she says, quote, do you think I'd give up on an opportunity because you got cold feet? She so reads him there. It's such a good, she clocks him basically. She's like, I took the job, dumbass. Cassidy's so good for Cisco because she knows they have different types of anxiety. He's like an anxiously attached person, and she's like I need to like assert my existence kind of anxiety person. I love that about them. My third note, just as a lore nerd, is that this episode introduces us to a new alien race, the Breen. These are the aliens that have taken over the ship, that wear those cool helmets. We're gonna see them again. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay.
The Breen are going to matter more later, but this is the seed of like, oh, they're people dealing with Bajorans. That's weird. Yeah. Any stray notes for me?
No, I think I covered them. This is an A for me. I really like this episode.
Yeah, I think so too. A for Apple. Let's do our last one before our break here. It's 406 Rejoined. I don't have a lot of notes about this one because all I had writing in my notes over and over again is this is a T for T love story. It's a trans for trans love story for the less informed out there. Dax meets her symbiont's. Let me get this right. Her previous host was married and in love with, or was in love with this person's previous host, and now
I think they were married. Yeah,
they were married.
Yeah.
But the hosts were together, but now the new hosts don't know each other, but they do know each other. And they are still in love with each other. This is called a reassociation. The Trill consider this very unnatural because metaphors for queerness, which I'm sure you have some great notes. I saw that you have some really great notes about how the showrunners thought about this. Basically, it's them having to. There's this mission. The other woman comes onto the ship and is like, I have this mission. I have to do it. I have to focus on it. And Dax is like, I also have to focus on it, but maybe we shouldn't be together because the part in our brains knows that we used to love each other, and that's still in me. I still love you. I can't ignore those feelings, and it builds, and there's steaminess, and it's hot, and it's very gay, no matter what anyone else tells you. And they save each other, and there's some bad CG in the scene where Dax saves her. And there's tension. It's relationship tension. I don't have a little Curzon in me telling me to be impulsive like you. This is a real relationship that they have inside of both of their heads. And it ends with one of the greatest final fucking shots of Star Trek. Are you kidding me? This like 15-second shot of Dax watching the woman leave and just staring at each other for so long with no dialogue that I was like, did my episode pause? Because you're the love of your life. The love of your past life has left you. I'm a sap. This was incredible to me. It's very romantic. It's very steamy. And no matter what they tell me, this is gay. They kiss, bro.
Yeah. This episode is fucking fantastic. This is so good. I mean, the smallest reason it's so good is because Alexander Siddig and Terry Farrell actually learned real magic tricks to pull Latinum out of Quark's ear. Awesome. That's just a random thing. Kira's wearing her Bajoran dress uniform is also awesome, just little things like that. But yeah, this core love story between these two Trill who essentially loved each other in a past life is kind of the simplest way to put it. And they just treat this love story with such reverence and kind of like, almost Shakespearean star-crossed drama. And this like, we know that this is right and that we're supposed to be together. Everyone's telling us it's wrong. Makes it so that it can evoke, a lot of different relationship dynamics that are kind of about like, for one reason or another, our love is taboo. And I think that across time periods and contexts, that theme fundamentally speaks to a lot of people. And also, two women kiss on your television screen
in the 90s.
This is the first same-sex kiss that happens in Star Trek. This is it. Like, this is a huge moment. Textually, it's a very compelling, powerful, beautiful love story. And within the larger context, this is also such a powerful, portrayal of queer love on television. And I think that that's amazing. The kiss scene itself is the best kiss I've ever seen in a TV show or a movie ever.
It's incredible.
It's so well acted because it's not like, oh, we got a kiss. Oh, straight to the kiss. It's like both of them are kind of negotiating. Oh, I'm just hugging you. No, I'm not. I'm just going to smell your lips. Actually, we'll do a little. No, it's like a big kiss. Oh, we should stop kissing. No, let's keep kissing. Like, you watch them figure this out for 30 seconds. It's amazingly acted. And also big props to Avery Brooks, who is the director on this episode, for that shot that you described at the end, for the shot right after the kiss where Dax kind of leans against the big circle window. Looks really cool. For the way that he frames the kiss and just kind of lets it sit there on screen so that the actors can really explore that moment. And also around the actual shots that we see, he made a lot of really intentional choices to make sure that this was a comfortable space for them to do
Yeah,
something that was, I'm sure, when you're on a TV show in the 90s, um, a scary thing to do, and
for
to
sure.
be at the epicenter of. And I was reading on Memory Alpha, there were people from like, Entertainment Tonight or something who were like, "Oh, can we get in there on set and like film it?" And Avery Brooks was like, "Fuck no. No, you cannot. This is not we're not gonna sensationalize this. I'm not gonna, like, do a zoom in on the kiss and be like, 'Look, 2 ladies kissing.'" Because he wanted it to be about the fact that these characters are in love, and we're not gonna, like, make it a gimmick that this is taking place.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's from him being an actor and understanding what it feels like to be an actor at a center of that experience. It's from him being a black man in the 90s who lived through a period of time where, like, even in the 90s, but definitely when he was younger, these kinds of relationships between people of different races were stigmatized to this extent.
He lived through
Um,
Uhura and Kirk, right? That was in
exactly,
his
right.
lifetime.
So Avery Brooks did a fantastic job directing this, both like in camera and also
Behind the scenes.
managing kind of the personal people experiences behind the scenes. Yeah. And that definitely shows up on screen with the comfort that the two of them have in exploring this as like a very passionate love story.
My last thing I want to say about the kiss before we also talk about the like what the other people thinking of episodes, people who wrote this thought about it. Um,
Hmm.
this is such a subtle detail, and maybe it's not intentional. I think it has to be. For those who have kissed before,
Hmm.
usually two people standing up kiss involves one person grabbing the person's back of their neck. Um, and again, I'm saying usually and traditionally because there's no right way to do anything here, right?
Hmm.
The more masculine or dominating figure tends to be the one to do that. The other person leans back, the first other person grabs the back of the neck. Dax is the one that goes for the neck. I think that
Hmm.
there's something fascinating about the fact that the person that was in the relationship with the other person was a man, and that they do that. They have the dominating person be
Right.
Dax.
Right.
And I think that fits their current personalities. I think that fits like Jadzia's and Khan's personality.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's all there. It's such a beautiful kiss. And yeah, first same sex kiss on Star Trek. Hopefully to see many
Hmm.
more as we keep going. But
Yeah.
yeah, so you had some notes here about like what they thought about this.
Um, yeah, it's really I would encourage folks to read the entirety of the like reception section, the background section on the Memory Alpha page because you get a lot of different perspectives here. I mean, you can imagine what the audience reception was. There was a mix of obviously for decades afterwards, queer people being like, "Oh my god, thank you for doing this." And then you have people at the time calling up the station or the company or whatever and being like, "You should have warned us. My kids were watching that and you're ruining my children." Like that sort of bullshit.
Advertisers in the
Um,
South dropping the kiss scene from the broadcast, stuff like that.
yep, yep, exactly. Um, which sucks, and you also can imagine that happening
Yeah,
even today, unfortunately.
absolutely, absolutely.
But there's this great little anecdote of there was a production assistant who took a call from some guy who was like, "You're ruining my kids by making them watch 2 women kiss like that." And then the production assistant said, "Okay, would you be okay with your kids seeing one woman shooting the other?" And the man was like, "Yeah, I would be okay." And the production assistant said, "You should reconsider who's messing up your kids." And
Bing. That's awesome.
so good, fucking legendary. Um, but yeah, there's this weird strain through how most people talk about from the Star Trek production side, um, talk about this where like Terry Farrell says, um, basically they're all kind of saying this version of like, it's so great that we got to tell this love story where it's like not even about them being lesbians. It's just about the trill. Um, and Terry Farrell's like, it's not about this big lesbian kiss. And Avery Brooks is like, the kiss was irrelevant. It's a story about love. Um, One of the writers, Renee Echevarria, is like, we're telling the story without ever talking about the fact that they're two women. Um, Ira Stephen Bear is like, we're not doing a show about lesbians. We're doing a show about trills.
Shut
And
up, bro.
it's just weird. Like, I kind of get what they're saying, but they're all saying it in a really kind of like I don't see color sort of way. Um, and Ronald D. Moore is the only one. He's one of the writers on this.
Yeah.
He's the only one who really says this in a way that I'm like, okay, thank you. This makes sense.
Yeah.
Where essentially he says, yeah, the great thing is with science fiction is you can do a story where you say it's about the trill, but it's really an allegory. And it's like, yeah, of course, because
That's yeah.
this is you're doing something when you say, oh, it's about the trill, but on TV you have two human women kissing each other. Just because
Yeah.
you didn't ever say in the script, by the way, we're two ladies, this is a story about queerness.
That's
It's just so strange. And like, I understand maybe at the time
yeah.
you want to try to um couch it or whatever, but and obviously this allegory, like I was saying, can apply much more broadly
Yeah.
to all sorts of groups of people where their relationships are stigmatized for
Mhm.
various reasons. Um and is like in line with the previous episode where Gul Dukat was in this stigmatized relationship,
Correct.
interspecies relationship.
Correct.
Um, but it's just so strange that everybody's kind of like, whoa, yeah, it's not about them being gay.
I'm glad you guys like it, but that's not what we intended.
It's just about love.
I have to death of the author it at some point and
Hmm.
accept, and that's, I think as a creator you have to let people do what they want with your work and you put it out there,
Hmm.
and to it's almost I would argue, almost argue it's a little cowardly to be like, no, it's not that. Like
Yes, that's
this
my thing with it. Yeah.
this comes up a lot lately, right? The guy who wrote the YMCA song recently was like, Donald Trump's allowed to use it because it's not about gay people, it's not a gay anthem. The guy who wrote the song. And it's like, you don't get to decide that anymore. It's not yours
Hmm.
anymore. You're out of the story. And I'm glad
Hmm.
it's fine that you're still alive and you get to say that so that you can, you can slobber the knob of the incumbent president, but like, it
Hmm.
is what it is. Or Gregory Maguire, the guy who wrote the original Wicked novel, was asked recently, and someone was like, "Did you ever like consider like Alphaba to be a trans allegory?" And he was like, "No, not even a little bit." But I think it's cool that people do. But that's not what I did. I'm just a gay man from Massachusetts. Like,
Hmm.
I was just writing the homosexual allegories all up the wazoo because that's what I like. That's how
Right.
I butter my biscuit. So just this comes up a lot where creators are like, "No, it's not that. It could be." And I think it's more fun and more engaging for your fan base, who are, as we know, for Trek especially, like very queer, very
Hmm.
neurodivergent, to like let us have that. It even comes back to like, Data or any of the other characters on this show as like autistic coded. These metaphors are for us to decide. It's not for. I don't think it has to be up to the showrunner and the writers to decide.
Hmm.
So this
Hmm.
is like, for me, there's a great line where Dax sees the other woman and says, you know, I see the person in front of me, but I know that there's another person back there. That's the
Right.
trans allegory for me. Is
Yes,
like,
exactly. Right.
I love the person in front of me, but the person I loved is not who I'm looking at, and
Hmm.
that's something I'm trying to square. But there is still a love there, and I accept it and embrace the different person you've become.
Hmm.
Um, and they definitely didn't intend that, for sure, for sure. But that's what I
Yeah.
read in it, and I'm gonna go ahead with that. That's why I said it's a T for T love story, because that's how I enjoy reconciling and
Hmm.
understanding this episode.
Yeah, and maybe that's a place where, like, me being frustrated with this, I can relax that frustration a little bit, because if you, in a story like this, over label within the text what it is you're doing, you kind of close off those possibilities for people to come along later on, like we're doing, and be thinking about this in ways that in popular culture in the 90s, they're not talking about trans women,
Correct.
like Dax is not a trans woman, in their minds. But that that whole thing like is at the core of a lot of what I was seeing here, is this feeling of, oh, well, we were together in a different chapter of our lives when we thought about ourselves completely differently, or we identified completely differently. And what does it mean to reinitiate a relationship when so much has changed, but so little has changed? And you even have the scene where the two of them are talking on the bridge at one point, and there's all this pronoun and name
Yeah.
confusion between the two of them of like, well,
He, I
you
mean,
did this. I mean,
you.
he, I mean, let me just use the proper names so I don't get confused about what I'm saying. Um, and it's even separate from queerness about this, like you're in a relationship with somebody when you're really young, and you meet at a later chapter in your lives, and you kind of have the same issues, but you find the same
Before sunrise.
passion. Exactly. Like it's even that, which doesn't necessarily have to be a queer love story. So this story can contain and relate to a lot of different things, obviously. Um, but yeah, it's just silly to me when there's this kind of like, oh, well, we don't even really see queerness. It's just about love. But you had two ladies kiss on TV. So just say it with your chest, like we're doing gay shit on Star Trek. And that's and that's cool. Like I'm cool with it. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. I encourage people to read the Memory Alpha
Yeah.
page about it. This is an S to me. I really loved this episode. I thought it was great.
I'm willing to give you that. I had some two quick side notes on this one.
Yeah.
Cisco initially protests the whole situation, but when Dax is like, I can't deny the feelings that are inside of me, he's like, I'm willing to defend you no matter what it takes, all the way.
Yep.
The way that, speaking of Avery Brooks' unique line delivery, the way he says all the way, I was like, to have someone to support you like that is beautiful, and especially when it's your captain, my captain. I love that. The constant refrain of him calling Dax old man sometimes reads as like he refuses to accept the new person, but lines like this feel like you get it. You do get it. He's the like understanding father who's like, I've never seen this before, but I love my friend or my child in that case.
Yeah, there's scenes like that around the periphery that are scenes of like a queer person going to their community and trying to navigate like how other people are dealing with or feeling about their queerness. There's the scene where Khan's talking to her brother, and her brother's sort of like, he's basically like, did you ever think about not being gay?
Yeah.
Like, maybe stop. And what
sure
about that? Yeah.
He's my therapist who, when I told him I was queer, was like, do you know? Have you checked? Oh golly, we're past him now. It's okay.
Yeah.
My last note's just a funny Worf line where Kira is talking to everyone else. They're talking about like generally trill stuff and like, what do people with different bodies think dream about? She goes, hey Worf, what do Klingons dream about? Another point in the Quark is neurodivergent box. He's like, oh, just the most filthy, disgusting, horrifying nightmare shit you would ever see, and I would never tell you about it because it would ruin your brain. Anyways, bye. He walks away, and she's like, I don't know if he's lying or not, and I don't want to ask anymore. So fucking funny. Worf's weird. I love Worf so much. Yeah, this is an S tier episode for sure.
Yeah.
So let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the second half of the first half of Season 4 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine right after this.
If anything, by spending your free time in the bedroom, a place you intimately associate with Keiko, you are actually expressing a desire to be closer to her during her absence. It's quite touching, really.
Exactly. See, you understand. Now, why can't she see that? Why can't she be more like... a man. More like a man.
Hello and welcome back to Chatz Television Podcast, special series that we do sometimes, TrekChatz, the show where we're watching Star Trek for the very first time. Welcome back to our coverage of the first half of Deep Space Nine Season 4. Alan, hey.
Back at him. Back at you, Cleopatra.
Oh, I love your commitment to community service.
Me too, man.
Let's
I miss him.
dive right back in. Oh,
I was also doing a Clone High quote. We're just doing Clone High quotes.
you say I miss him?
I miss him, like the kidney that's inside of.
Yeah. I miss him.
I miss him.
remember. A good bit. We're diving right back in with season 4, episode 7, I do believe, entitled Starship Down. So this is sort of like, well, you said it was like Das Boot, basically.
Yeah, that's what I think the Wikipedia. I noticed that Memory Alpha has really good, like very in-depth moment-to-moment summaries. Wikipedia has really good condensed summaries. If you like are watching an episode and you're like, what just happened? What was the important thing out of that? It only tells you the important stuff. So it's good to use both. And yeah, the quote in Wikipedia was like, this episode's basically a remake of Das Boot. People stuck on a submarine. We just did a Xena episode that's the same idea, except instead of a submarine, it's the Defiant, and we're trapped on a gas planet instead of the ocean.
This one was good. There's, I don't know.
James Cromwell.
I think, yeah. He's in very heavy alien makeup, but I was like, this tall guy with a distinctive voice. I know this guy. Who is this? And I looked it up, and it's like, oh yeah, it's James Cromwell, Star Trek's own. But this episode is okay. It's one of the ones that I was less interested in the season, I think, because it kind of suffered from not exactly the same issues as that Xena episode we talked about, but similar issues of how interesting is it really to like just kind of trap everybody here. I think the best stuff was probably the Kira Cisco stuff. I thought that was pretty excellent.
Yeah.
What do you think of this one overall?
I think that what doing a submarine or a trapped episode does for your show is it gives the characters like high enough stakes that they're like, well, if I'm going to die, I might as well say this. And everybody gets something like that in this episode. Even Hanok, the Karema trade minister played by James Cromwell, like all of them get to be like, this is the fundamental thing I believe about the world, and like get to be kind of nakedly honest there. And that's just always cool and fun and characterful. I don't think that there's much else to this episode, though. I guess like continuing the theme of the Jem'Hadar and their sort of attack and the Dominion's greater attack being about not attacking directly, but by like slowly and steadily hampering the Federation and Starfleet and other nations, saying like, we don't like your trade negotiations, so that's why we're trapping you here. We're not going to give you information because we want to let you guys die out yourselves. That's all here, but yeah, I thought it was kind of fine overall. I agree the Kira and Cisco stuff was important. It's good to check in on that relationship again and be like, why is Kira weird around Cisco? She makes a great point. She basically says in when they're like, running out of oxygen and he's unconscious and he's like, I just need you to talk to me. And her first conflict is like, I don't know how to have small talk with you. Part of that is because he's her captain and there's a power dynamic there. It's your boss. But part of it is because he's also an emissary for her culture. He's a religious figure. So that's like if you worked for the Pope and the Pope was like, hey, what do you do for fun? You're like, I can't talk about that with you. Like, I don't feel like I can just say that. So she's struggling with that. Cisco's kind of out of commission for a lot of this, but he's funny and charming in his own little ways. That's all, like you said, well and good. We learn a lot about how Kira feels about Cisco. Dax and Bashir, I think, had the most like, yeah, this is what I expected. We kind of like each other, and it's about like, I didn't like the way you flirted with me. You weren't like explicit enough about your intentions. He's like, well, why didn't you like me? She's like, well, because you never just like said, do you want to go on a date? You were just weird with me, and I kind of liked you, but you never asked me out, like a normal guy. I would have probably said yes.
Pretty good. Yeah, that was pretty good.
And then sorry, go on. Please.
No, go ahead.
Just the last one being the Quark and the Karema laughing, like coming from like a point of disagreement, like you're a criminal and I like again believe in sort of honor and I hate the Dominion and the Jem'Hadar, and then it's like, but you did we learned at the end that the Karema guy sold weapons to them, and Quark is basically able to bond with him over gambling, and he's like, this is kind of like a gamble. Would you want to get into game? Do you want to come to the casino later? I can teach you how to play our games.
Yeah, that one's a little hard to enjoy because the gist of it is the James Cromwell character is like, well, you like to scam people and you try to barter, and I believe that there's a sort of objective value of something based on its materials and the labor that went into it. So I'm like an ethical capitalist. And you're like, come on, bro, what are you talking about?
You're selling weapons to the Jem'Hadar. You're right. A war profiteer.
Quark's like, come on, just admit that you like to scam people and gamble. And the feel good ending is this guy is like, I guess capitalism can involve just completely abandoning all of your morals, and I feel good about that.
Yeah.
But whatever. The Kira Sisko of it all was not a relationship that to me ever read as unusually strained or wooden between them.
Yeah. It's respect.
Not to say that. Oh, go ahead. What?
It's a boss-employee relationship. It never felt like it was more or less than that.
Yeah, but I like what this episode does with it to sort of highlight. Well, if you think about it, there are many relationships between characters that are more warm than the two of them.
Yes.
So like, it's not weird per se, but they work very closely with each other, and they pretty much never socialize. And I love the moment where Sisko, he's in pain and he's barely conscious, and Kira's trying to say things to him to keep him awake. And she starts describing this idea she had for changing the shift rotations. And then she catches herself. She's like, why am I talking about this? What do we normally talk about? Sisko goes, word.
Dude, when he said that, I was like jumping the gun. I'm like, he's going to say work. And then he said it, and I was like, I almost thought I was going to be wrong. That's funny that I was right.
Yeah. And it's great to see, even separate from the emissary stuff, which, I think sometimes it's like, whatever, he's the emissary, like who cares? But sometimes that's cool and interesting. I like that Kira is a spiritual character, because on first glance, you don't necessarily feel like that fits with the other aspects of her. She's a very skeptical person and very like literal. But she's still, her faith is actually extremely important to her, which is compelling. But even separate from that, just that dynamic of like, I guess we never talk. All right, I'm going to tell you a couple stories. And then at the end of the episode, when he's like, hey, by the way, we're going to do that shift thing you talked about. Also, you want to come see a baseball game with me? Here's a baseball hat. Go get some hot dogs from Quark. So that was cute.
Hot dog? The way she says,
he'll know what to give you. Yeah.
I think if we're going to keep going for headcanons, I think Kira has never seen or thought about a man's penis before. And so her wearing a baseball cap, which is something often associated with lesbianism, and then being like, what is a hot dog? This one's a stretch, guys. This one's me stretching, but it's funny to me.
Okay. I mean, that would require...
Oh, she does love men, though, like a lot, right? She has like had a lot of relationships with men.
Yeah, but I guess we don't know for sure the genitals of Vedic Bareil.
Nor do we care. In fact, let's move on beyond this point. Goodbye. Thank you for swerving that. I just loved Kira in a baseball cap. That's what I'm really getting at, and it gave
it was great.
Big sapphic energy.
Nana Visitor is so good at just the genuine big smile.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, she's so happy she's got her big baseball hat on.
It helps. She has these like, I'm looking at the shot of her with the baseball hat. She has these like nice, like fun dimples too. She has a big smile, and it reaches her eyes too, which is always fun. Yeah, just very warm, very kind, and it's something that the character of Kira doesn't do super duper duper often.
Yes, right.
And so when she smiles, it's sort of like when Odo smiles, which is even more of a treat. It's like, oh man, these are people who don't get to smile very much in this series.
Yeah.
My last detail about this one is just there's a Morn check-in. I love Morn so much, dude. He's just such a good character. And it's always right in the side of an important scene. It's like we're at Quark's. By the way, Morn's here. Or we're at Quark's. Hey, someone's having a conversation with Morn. Let's move away from that. It's like, no, just that's Morn, you guys. That's my boy right there. All I care about is Morn all the time. And I know you guys are like, I can't wait for Alan to learn that there's a Morn episode. I do know that there's coming a Morn episode at some point in the future. I don't know when, but I'm excited for it. And I love he talks about how he has 17 brothers and sisters. But I say talks about, I mean Quark talks about that to him because they still haven't let my boy talk. Let him speak. Give him a voice. Treat him with the respect he fucking deserves. John's smiling because he thinks I'm joking. I'm not joking. Deadly serious.
I don't think you're joking. I had forgotten who Morn was, and so when it was such a funny side detail when Amanda and I were watching The Visitor, and one of the future details is Nog is like, yeah, Morn's running the bar now. Amanda and I were both like, who's Morn? Who are they talking about?
He's so important to me, Magellan. I'm gonna cry. He's so important. I just think it's fun to have a recurring singular character who like grounds us in DS9.
Yeah.
Even if they don't talk to him, you can see every time they go to Quark's bar, Morn is there. He's Norm. That's the joke. He's the Cheers character, Norm.
Yes, right.
So I give this episode a B.
Yeah, it's a B.
Hard B. I wrote A, but I don't know. I wasn't know what I was thinking of. God, this next one's fascinating, huh? 408. This is Little Green Men. What a fun and interesting episode. That concept we haven't seen since TNG. This is a very TNG, kind of a Farscapey episode. It's like if a Human Reaction, but everybody who came to Earth was stupid.
Yeah.
And capitalist as hell. That's a little Farscape ref for y'all. But anyways, Quark, Nog, and Rom go to take Nog to Earth to go join Starfleet. We're picking up on that thread. But one of their cousins sabotages the trip, and they end up in a time warp, which brings them to Roswell, New Mexico in the early 20th century. Or the mid 20th century, and they are treated like little green men or aliens, Martians. And at first, a lot of the episode is about translator microbes. I'm sorry, I mean translator, thingies in your head. And once they can speak English, Quark uses this as an opportunity to potentially scam the United States out of all of its gold bars and make a huge profit on it. This doesn't work because Odo came along disguised as a chair. Some of the funniest changeling was here all along moments. And there's a lot of back and forth, and there are these two people who work with the Roswell people who eventually agree to help our crew get back to where they belong. And in an absurd but also predictable twist, we're in Roswell. Someone says, if we want to go back, we need an incredibly strong source of energy. It's the 1940s. Where are we possibly going to find it? Have you guys heard of an atom bomb? And they drive a ship, the ship that they're on, into the atom bomb nuclear test. I think that's the Trinity nuclear test. No, maybe no. That would then be in New Mexico. And it blows up and takes them home. What? This episode's absurd. I loved it. It's so funny. My summary was a little scatterbrained, but I'm curious what you thought of the ep.
I definitely enjoy this one. I mean, I love Rom so much.
So good in this. I
love Nog. I don't love Quark, but I love when Quark is with Rom and Nog. And so to basically get to do this little strange bottle episode with the three of them is really, really fun. I like that they're also doing this thing with Rom where now he's getting a little more. There's this line where he has the idea for how to he wants to get them to Earth faster because they have this contraband that might go bad or it's unstable. Oh, well, I noticed that you were acting this way and I figured out that we're carrying this contraband and yeah, we could do this and get to Earth even faster. And Quark's like, when did you get so smart? Rom says, I've always been smart, brother. I've just lacked in self-confidence. And that is fantastic.
Rom is the definition of he's the definition of act dumb, be smart, basically. He's always known these things. He just doesn't talk about it. And like you said, it's because he's not self-confident, but he is brilliant.
Yeah. And so he gets a lot of the techno babble in this one and in holodeck one that we'll talk about in a couple episodes. So I just love that they're doing that they're giving Rom more opportunities to be the tech whiz. And yeah, it's fun to take this tone with the like 1940s military people who are making alien discoveries and keeping it a secret, that they're all just kind of dumb.
Yeah.
They're not like this. They're not actually that insidious or good at keeping secrets. They are just like very easily manipulated by their paranoia about communists or Soviets or whatever. And they're kind of like goofball slapstick losers. And that's fun to me. You could kind of do this as a more serious concept, but I think in many ways this is meant to be a comedic foil to some of the sentiments we see later in the season when we return to Earth and we think about how Earth is responding to the imminent threat of a changeling invasion or whatever.
Yeah.
And this episode makes us think, oh wow, Earth and human society has come so far since the 1940s. They would never do this kind of thing. Well, actually, they're not that far from that, because those same kind of fear-based sentiments are 100% what's motivating the almost complete fascist takeover of Earth in a couple episodes from now. So I like it when a season is able to give you the goofy version of a theme before they give you the serious version of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of like, this is a light version of something that'll be more serious later, and a sort of good emotional core to this, right? We start such a good cold open where Nog is selling off all of his stuff as part of a Ferengi ritual. Like when you move, you don't give away your stuff, you sell it and you barter for it. It is so cute. Worf buys a Ferengi tooth sharpener. The little scene of him going like, ow, and like sharpening his own tooth. Mwah. I love Worf. He's so weird and silly. Jake is like sad that Nog is leaving and says, I've really had fun with you. Like, but I think about like what we've done and we kind of like do nothing. Like we go up to get up to schemes, we kind of do nothing. And Nog says, and I quote, "I can't think of anyone I'd rather do nothing with than you."
It's so sweet. Them on the promenade thinking about like all the time they spent together there.
It makes me want to cry.
I know. They're lingering there. They don't really want to leave. It's so beautiful.
This is in general a wonderful episode for Nog to be sent off with, because so much of what Nog has been learning about in like getting ready for Starfleet is history and culture and like what humans are like. And so he's actually really crucial once they do get to New Mexico in being like, so they speak English. The thing that they're smoking is called tobacco, and it's bad for them, and they're killing themselves. Like he's an anthropologist of sorts. He knows a lot about humans, and just like I think back to like to DS9, our TrekChatz like first discussions being like, the Jake Nog stuff is so stupid. It's so dumb. Like, what is this growing up story? And now to come 4 seasons later and be like, God, I love these boys so much. I would do anything for them. They're both so... And people joked. I remember people in our Discord being like, guys, Nog is actually good. And we're like, no, Nog's annoying. He's so horny and stupid. And it's like, and we were all like that when we were kids. And then we grew up. And Nog is growing up. And it's so nice to see. Speaking of culture anthropology, this is the scene where when they're going to Earth, he's like, I was reading about stuff, and you guys know about the Bell Riots? Does this guy look like Cisco to you? And he pulls up a picture of Avery Brooks, and they go, all humans look alike, Nog. It's probably not him. Shut up. Another great, if you've been watching the show and remembering episode.
Yeah, and that's also a cute little way to prepare us for the fact that we're about to go into the past.
Yes, we're doing time travel stuff just like we did before. Don't mess up the time stream.
Yeah.
I also just enjoyed the two like humans that help them out. The way that they would flirt with each other was everything else is so dumb and so like low IQ, but the two of them being like, you're gonna get married soon. I can't wait to see you in your wedding dress, which is like flirty, but in a 40s way. Like he's not saying I can't wait to see you naked. He's like, I can't wait to see you in your wedding dress. And then he's like, they're so optimistic. Someday we'll go to the stars. Maybe we'll even go to Mars. And like talking about our honeymoon. Maybe we'll go to Mars for a honeymoon. This is really genuinely cute acting from the two of them. And then hardest laugh of the episode for me. I love it. I love Animorphs. And when the dog that's here transforms into Odo, I cackled. I had to pause because I was like, are you? Because they needed Odo to be in this episode. Otherwise, it would have gone swimmingly. The humans are too dumb. President Truman would have been like, sure, here's 1 million gold bars. I don't know. And it would have just worked. They needed someone to be like, Quark, you're under arrest. You just scammed the entire human race. Back the hell up.
That was great. Yeah.
And then my final note was how funny it is that, you know, they do all this stuff and it's like, how do we justify this not breaking the timeline? And you have the general, like the United States Army general, be like, nobody ever fucking talk about any of this again. It's Roswell. We do that. Stuff like this happens and we don't say anything. Shush. Yeah. And that's how they justify that this doesn't break anything. It just, it happens. Fun episode.
Yeah, I like, how they're able to just sort of justify, we have first contact later. This is technically first contact, but they don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So don't worry about it.
Exactly.
Some funny production notes real quick on the Wikipedia page. The James L. Conway, who wrote the episode, Ira Bear basically had a meeting with him like, hey, are you sure you can make this funny in the right way? And he was like, yeah, I think I can. So that's
awesome.
amazing. For the role of Nurse Garland, the producers requested a Megan Gallagher type.
Whoa.
And then her agent was like, actually, Megan Gallagher could do it. So that's Nurse Garland.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
she was on DS9 before.
Seen her on DS9 before, in the episode Invasive Procedures, which is the one.
It's where like the other Trill wants to take the symbiont from Dax.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
She's one of the other people helping that guy out, like the lover or something.
Yeah, she was the one who wasn't a Trill, but was his lover. Yeah. That's right.
Wow.
But yeah, that episode was it's like a high B low A to me. It's a fun little romp.
Yeah, romp.
I
want to give this a B just because we have so many more S's to come that we got to even the scales a little.
That's fair. That's fair.
Oh,
one little line that I also liked is when they get the orders back from President Truman, the military guy with the cigar.
Yeah.
By the way, it's so funny how much they're smoking in this episode. They're all just sitting in a room smoking and filling the air with
and Rom and Quark have to be like, you guys are going to kill yourselves, right? You know that? And they're like,
yeah,
we don't know that cigarettes are bad for you yet. That's probably fine.
But the cigar chomping military guy, when he gets the orders back from Truman, he says, that little piano playing Democrat's not as dumb as he looks. I thought that was fun.
I knew you would appreciate that line.
Yeah. All right, little green man is a bee.
There's a part where they're trying to convince the guys that they're going to invade, and Nog point. I always forget the fucking Ferengi names. Nog points to a map, and he's like, "We're gonna invade here." And the guy goes, "You're gonna invade Cleveland?" And he's like, "No, no, this one." Shout outs to Cleveland. I don't know why they have to catch strays. All of our friends who have gone to school in Cleveland hate it, so I guess that tracks. Anyways, let's move on. Next up is 409, The Sword of Kahless. A fascinating episode where, again, guys, if we had watched TOS, this would have hit a little harder because Kor is back, and he's one of the first Ferengi we ever saw in Star Trek. Klingons, sorry. I wrote Ferengi in my notes. Wow, amateur hour. First Klingon that we ever saw in TOS back in the day. He is asking Worf's help to find the Sword of Kahless, the founder of Klingon society, the first emperor. They have suspicions of where it is. This is very Indiana Jones 3, like very, very Last Crusade. Like, let's take this old man and go on a final mission. Treasure of Sierra Madre, Indiana Jones. Like, they're doing, the two of them and Dax go on a secret adventure to find the Sword of Kahless. They find it, but it starts to sort of affect them mentally. It's unclear if it's actually sort of spiritual, magical, or if it's just the two of them have really strong relationships to Klingon society. And they fight in a cave about whether or not I should be the next emperor because I have it, because I'm more experienced, or should you, because you'll create a better future, Worf. And Dax is kind of intermediating them. And finally, after saving Kor's life by having him grip onto the Sword of Kahless, they both agree that neither of them should have it. And probably no one should. And they jettison it into space. What do you think about the Sword of Kahless shoe store?
I thought it was okay. It's kind of fun to see Kor again. We did see him earlier in DS9 in the Blood Oath episode where him and all the other old Klingons are hanging out with Dax and that kind of thing. So he's back. And yeah, for the people who love that strand of Klingon-y stuff, I'm sure this is fun. And there is something intriguing about doing a Worf story where he gets kind of like too caught up in the idea of I'm going to restore my honor, I'm going to lead the Empire in a new direction, finds himself falling into very ambitious thoughts of, oh, well, maybe I could just be in charge of the Klingon Empire. That could be pretty cool. So that works for me, and I like when Kor gets mean to him and they're mean to each other. It just doesn't feel like it kind of resolves any of that in a satisfying way. They just sort of decide, well, I guess we're not ready for this. Let's go home. Which, I don't know. It just, that doesn't really feel like we got to something. It feels like we're just sort of circling back to where we started and leaving the episode. So it was intriguing and kind of a fun little adventure, but there wasn't much more to it for me than that. And Dax's role in it is just to sort of scold them the whole time.
Yeah.
And I wish that she had more of a take on this or more of an agenda than she does. So I don't know. I thought it was all right.
It's not the best script in the world. The scene when they're holding onto the sword for dear life, where Kor's holding on, and Worf's like, "There's a ledge beneath you," and Kor's like, "I don't believe you. I think you're gonna try and take the sword." Is like the kind of thing you write when someone's like, "You got to put stakes in this scene, because otherwise they're just gonna save him." And it's just Worf being like, "There's a ledge. You'll live if you jump on it." And he's like, "I don't believe you." Okay, well, this is unresolved. This is unresolvable. And I agree that, yeah, Dax is mostly here to mother the two of them and be like, stop.
Yeah.
I think there's something symbolic, though, about the two of them realizing no Klingon deserves to think that they have the divine right to rule. Like,
yes, true.
A good Klingon emperor, similar to George Washington, like, shouldn't think that they're the best guy, but should be the best guy. You know, that's like sort of was the adage when George Washington became president, was people would say like, oh, he didn't want to be president. That's why he was good at the job. And so that it's both the two of them leaving this episode realizing like old and new generation of Klingons need to understand that, you know, we may hate the current administration, we may think it could be fixed, but nobody deserves it. It has to be earned.
Yeah, I think both of them learn some degree of humility because they both, you know, for as much as they admire each other, they also look down on each other.
Yes.
Even from the beginning. And for Kor and Worf to realize that over the course of the episode, reckon with that, and ultimately kind of eat crow a little bit and say, okay, I thought that I was God's gift to Klingons, and you thought you were God's gift to Klingons. And that's just not true. Both of us are right about certain things, and we're very boneheaded about other things. And neither of us, like you're saying, deserves or is owed power.
Right.
And that is a good lesson for Worf to walk away with, for sure.
It's fun to see John Colicos back. He's the original Kor from TOS. He's the original Baltar from BSG. He's a great actor. He's on General Hospital. He's done a lot of good stuff. He died in 2000, so we'll see him at least one or two more times on DS9, which has his final acting roles. So I think this is a B.
All right. Yeah, B.
B. Let's talk about our man Bashir, 410.
Yeah, let's do it. The best thing about season 4 of Deep Space Nine is they're finally using the fucking holosuites more
in like more unique and creative ways than TNG would. Like they're branching out.
Yeah. Even just the Way of the Warrior, the first episode of the season felt like it had more holosuite scenes than all of the previous seasons combined.
Agreed.
I don't think that's actually true, but by this point already season 4 has surpassed, and we've finally gotten to like an episode that takes place in a holosuite program.
Yeah, our man Bashir kind of feels like a Xena episode in the sense of, you know what's fun is watching the people you know be somebody else. Isn't that just inherently fun? The answer is yes. Essentially, Bashir is living out a James Bond sexual fantasy, adventure fantasy on the holodeck when his boyfriend Garrick walks in and basically just pokes his finger in the wound and goes, "Is this secret? Should I not know about this? I would like to know about this. Are you hiding this? Can I be here for this?" Bashir begrudgingly lets him in, and then while they're there, a explosion happens. This is my biggest problem with the episode. They don't care about justifying why it's happening. The point is that it's happening, which is that the crew ends up as characters in Bashir's James Bond. An explosion happens. They do. They say an explosion happens and it messes up the electronics, and then while they're warping, right?
No, but I think they actually go to great lengths to create an interesting sci-fi premise here, which is, it's an intriguing way to do a new spin on holodeck stuff, and also the beam me up Scotty, what's that called? Transporter stuff. Because what happens is, for some stupid reason, I don't know why all 5 of them were on a runabout together. They go to warp onto Deep Space Nine. It gets blown up mid-warp. So their data that would be used to reconstitute them is in like the temporary, it's like in the RAM or whatever of the computer, and it's about to degrade because it hasn't been saved to like a hard drive. So in a sort of an emergency measure, the engineering guy has to save their data, and he's like, "Computer, just fucking save the data." The computer's like, "You don't have enough disk space. You're gonna have to delete some stuff, reformat your hard drive or something." Yeah. And the guy's like, "Okay, fine, fuck it. Like, put it wherever you want." And so what the computer does is it puts their body data in the holodeck, but their neural data is too complicated to fit into the holodeck, so it like zips their neural data and just kind of puts it everywhere else in the memory of the space station.
Right.
So what Bashir has to do is he has to live out the holodeck program, make sure it doesn't end, because otherwise, if it ends or any of these characters die, the computer will just clear out the cache of their physical data and like delete their bodies. And that, it's kind of interesting. Like, it's 1996. We understand computers a little bit better.
Yeah.
So now we can do something that kind of makes more sense from a computer memory perspective. So I actually really enjoyed the sci-fi explanation for what's happening here.
I think I just didn't pick up on all of it because most of it's explained.
You have to really be paying attention to like fucking Greg from engineering and what he's talking about.
Because Majan, people like me are the reason why at the beginning of Rejoined, the Dax episode, they have to have Kira like sit Quark down and be like, "Okay, so there's a host and there's a symbian, right? This host and this host are seeing each other. This symbian, this symbian loved each other. That's what's happening." They need scenes like that because of people like me who I'm like, my brain resets tabula rasa every time I start an episode. I know nothing about nothing.
Yeah, I mean that stuff happens to me too on certain episodes.
Sure.
I also did watch this one twice because it was one of the ones that I fell asleep during, so I think it helped me to understand.
What you're here for, though, is the James Bond stuff.
Yeah, it's a fun pastiche that we haven't done yet.
Yeah.
They did a lot of genre pastiche on TNG, but these writers are a little younger, so maybe they're the same. I don't know, but they're not like, let's do those pulp crime novels from my childhood. Yeah. let's do those westerns. They're like, no, let's do some Bond movies. That could be fun. And I enjoy also the distinction between the role of the holodeck in TNG and in Deep Space Nine, which is maybe why they were hesitant to do a holodeck episode, is like the holosuites by design are for sexual pleasure in Quark's bar.
Correct.
So it's like, how do we do this? But there's just a fun, not just like a James Bond pastiche, but almost like a parody or poking fun at James Bond movies. That it's not just Bashir is Dixon Hill solving a crime. He's here to like be a hot spy and have sex with ladies, and that's the point of this. So it's fun that angle is a part of it. And like you're saying, of course, his boyfriend Garrick busts in and is like, "What? You're being kind of weird about this.
Is there a reason you're being weird about this?
I want to see your fantasy. Like, what's wrong with that?"
I feel so Garrick. In this episode, I feel like I am Garrick. Like, just tell me. I want to be there for it. I'll be your Bond girl. I'll be your little associate that helps you solve crimes.
Yeah.
A couple of hits. Speaking of just James Bond stuff, we've got Kira is a KGB agent doing the worst Russian accent you've ever fucking heard. The most like, what's the? I'm just trying to think of like a really vodka Drunkinsky from Punch Out. I was like, what's the most racist? Yakov Smirnoff, like, just what are you doing? Love it. She's hot and good. Dax is Dr. Noah's assistant who wears glasses, and at the end, that's how Bashir saves the day. So he takes her hairpin out. He's like, "You look better with your hair down. You fucking freak." How often do you think Bashir runs this exact fantasy to do that scene? Because he says it perfectly. It is almost like a borderline. Like I'm learning too much about Bashir's sexual proclivities in this episode.
Yeah, that's a part of it that's like fun. Yeah, exactly. And
you're like, you have a glasses fetish, dude.
Yeah, and that then reflects back on, makes you think about the kinds of movies that are accepted in popular culture that use these same tropes.
Right.
And you're like, oh yeah, I guess it's all just sort of a sexual fantasy, really.
Yeah, the rest of it's the wrapper around the horny part. That's the thing we come here for.
Right.
And then of course his boss, Cisco, is Dr. Noah. Get it? Dr. Noah. And he does the most like, I wrote I don't want to spoil what anime / manga this is from, but it's also from the plot of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire of like, I'm going to flood the earth by lowering the earth level so the waters flood the ocean and only the rich people who can stay on top are going to restart society. Insane plan. It seems like it's going to work. What? I love watching Avery Brooks commit to this cheesy character. He has not played somebody this loud and brash in this entire series, I think. This is really what you come here for.
It's so fun seeing him play a villain. I wonder if there's like a movie out there or something where he's like a serious version of a villain for the whole thing. I would be interested in
I would love that. Yeah.
But he's a lot of fun. Nana Visitor as the Russian KGB Bond girl is really funny and fun. I love seeing Cole Meany with an eye patch.
Falcon.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of wanted Michael Dorn to get a little sillier with it, but it is fun to see Worf in that nice crisp white tux. So it's fun. It's good. Like this has all the
Odd Job. He's kind of Odd Job, I guess. But yeah, I wish he got
this just has everything that you want out of a holodeck episode. Everybody's got a cool outfit on. They're playing characters. We're doing a genre thing. If you die in the game, you die in real life.
Yeah, it's
but
all
like
there.
For a reason that makes sense. It's all here. And another part of it that's so entertaining is Garrick the whole time being like, this is not how it works to be a spy. Spies do not do this.
That is not canon. That is not accurate to history.
And he keeps yelling at Bashir, saying things like, I want you to stop treating this like a game where everything will be all right in the end.
Which culminates in the hardest laugh of the episode, by the way. Sorry to jump you. When Bashir is like, all right, this is actually so easy. I'm going to like do this, finesse this, use a laser, use the hairpin. And he's like, that's brilliant. That's not going to work. And Bashir's like, you got to trust my plan. And you hear Garrick just go, no, I don't trust your plan. We're going to die in here. It felt so real. It felt like the actor stepped out of Garrick and was like, stop, please.
Yeah, he says stuff like, kiss the girl, get the key. They never taught me that in the Obsidian Order. And Garrick is like so determined to get Bashir to accept that somebody's going to have to die. And at one point, and I think this is really fascinating to see on display Garrick's instinct for self-preservation above anything else. He's sort of like, no matter what, I will survive this, even if other people die. And that's what's gotten him here alive. But it's also what's gotten him to the place where he's in exile. He doesn't really have a lot of close friends, which I think is really revealing about his character. But such a great moment where he's like, fuck it, computer, where are the controls? And Bashir shoots him, grazes him in the neck to get him to stop. And that's the moment where he's fully on board. He's like, all right, hey, it's your plan. You shot me. That was pretty fucking cool. Let's do it.
Garrick turning around at the end and being like, maybe having an imagination is good for the mind. It keeps you creative, keeps you sharp.
Yeah. Shit. Let's have lunch next week at your place in Hong Kong.
In Hong Kong. Ooh, hot.
Yeah.
I think this is an A. This is just fun.
It's fun. Yeah, it's a good holodeck episode.
It's a fun time at the movies, quite literally.
Yeah.
The next two can kind of be discussed as a pair because it's a two-parter, and this is the biggest sort of plot episodes of the season. 411 Homefront and 412 Paradise Lost start very simply. This is actually so funny that because I kept until this point I would read the Paramount Plus summaries before hitting play. And I was like, oh man, some of these I wish I didn't know what was going to happen. I wish I could just watch it like it was a new one. And so for Homefront, of all the episodes, I was like, I'm not going to read about this. And so it starts and it's like, oh, we're going to go to Earth and we're all going to hang out there and everyone's going to come down with us. We're going to see Nog. We're going to go see Cisco's dad. That's fine. And Cisco goes down for the main purpose of his meeting, which is to have a talk with Starfleet after there was an attack that blew up several dignitaries, and it was determined to be changelings who did it. And right at the end of the cold open of Homefront, they're like, yeah, Cisco, you're the head of security now. We need you to take this job, and that's what you do. You're head of security for Earth. What he discovers in that process, while everybody else is kind of dealing with their own shit, is that the changelings have started to invade Earth, and there are, as a changeling of O'Brien comes to him later and tells him, 4 changelings on Earth right now, according to this changeling who says this. And with only 4, they're able to destabilize the entire government of Earth, which again, it's kind of interesting how they talk about it as like the government of Earth, but my imperialist brain thinks of it as like the United States. I keep wanting to say the US, but it's like the whole planet is one government now. In part 2, he starts to deepen the conspiracy and realize that one of the other sort of higher up Starfleet people, whose name is Peyton, I believe. Peyton is using a lot of this destabilization because at the end of part 1, they like turn off the power grid for the entire planet, which is nuts. And he's using that to basically allow them to initiate martial law and take power and basically start a dictatorship on Earth, and using the auspices of the Changeling War to start a dictatorship. And Cisco is able to thwart this just barely, but we walk right up to the edge of a dictatorship almost overnight, and it's kind of fascinating. And it's a lot of the Thing, the blood test stuff. There's this intense anxiety between Cisco and his father. It's got a ton of elements across these 2 episodes that are really interesting, but it all boils down to there's a conspiracy that's using the Changeling War to start something worse, and this is all part of the Changeling's bigger plan. That was a lot, Mitchell. What did you think? What did you think about these eps?
I thought these episodes were excellent. And I think that they work really well as kind of mirrors of one another, because in the first one, in Homefront, we see Cisco in the position of supporting more order, more restrictions. Let's blood test everybody who's in Starfleet and related to someone in Starfleet. We need to make sure that Earth is safe. And he's totally down for that approach. And then in the second episode, after his dad has put some doubt into his mind, he starts to take the opposite position of actually, we're going too far with this. And so I think that this is a really, we don't get a lot of opportunities to see Sisko grow and change and reckon with deep conflicts that he has, because we kind of, like we've said before, his, I think, biggest character stuff we sort of figured out early on in the show. And now he's navigating complicated situations, but he always feels like he's coming from a place of conviction where he knows what he wants to do or how he wants to do it. But in these 2 episodes, he completely flips and starts off from one perspective, realizes, oh my God, I was wrong. I was getting duped. I was starting to believe things or act in a way that made me feel like somebody that I'm not. Let me find the courage to do the hard things and stand up for what I believe in. And that's an amazing arc to watch for his character across these 2. So I really enjoyed that. I thought his dad was great. We
Uncle
get to
Joe,
meet
or Grandpa
Uncle Joe, Grandpa Sisko. And it's a little like, I don't know. Oh, I have a restaurant in New Orleans, and it's like really in the 2200s with this kind of look and feel as authentic and close to now as it does. I hope so, but I don't know. But I think that him being a character who's so devoted to his culture's way of life, where he lives, in his desire to kind of like live the way he wants to, refusal to have that changed by the government, by medicine. You really get to see both the ways in which that stubbornness are harmful to him, and also the ways in which that stubbornness kind of helps Sisko to hold on to something that is really meaningful. And it's a case of when you meet a character's parent and you're like, oh my God, this is really clarifying
who they
and
are.
fascinating. Who they are, to watch them come into conflict with their parent. We recently, Amanda and I, watched Ted Lasso through, and this reminded me of the effect of the Ted Lasso episode where his mom comes to visit, and his mom is essentially just like, it's Ted Lasso, the mom version.
Yeah.
But when she's in the room fulfilling that role, now Ted is in response in a much different posture. And I think the same thing happens with Benjamin Sisko here. His dad is kind of the Commander Sisko figure here in the New Orleans restaurant. And everything that Sisko thinks or does or says is either out of admiration or frustration with his dad in response. I think they do a great job showing that, especially in the knife scene. That scene was like one of the best scenes that they've done on this show.
Is the implication of that scene that Sisko sees the blood and is like, I need to test my dad right now?
No, this is how I read it, is Sisko essentially decides, okay, well, it makes sense. We should blood test everybody who's a relative of a Starfleet officer.
Yeah.
Because those are the people who are going to have the closest access to Starfleet and present some kind of danger, threat to our planetary security.
Yeah.
And so they come to test his dad and Jake at the restaurant. And his dad is like, no, fuck you. I'm not going to prove to you that I am who I am. This is an absurd overreach. Why would a changeling impersonate me? Why do you think that this could even work? If I were a changeling, I would just suck up some extra blood that I could dump into the thing when I needed to. Like, all you're doing is making people's lives worse when you impose these restrictions. You're not making us any safer. You're actually making us less safe by doing these things to us. So he's like furious and frustrated, and Benjamin Sisko is basically like, Dad, can you just do what I tell you to do, please? Which in some ways is about him assuaging his own fear about the Dominion, and in some ways is about him assuaging his own fear about his dad dying one day because he's not listening to his doctors.
Yeah. That part hit close to home, by the way.
Yeah. And the thing that ends up happening is his dad doesn't relent. He doesn't agree to be tested, but he cuts himself by accident and bleeds. And that is proof, the same proof that a test would have provided that he's not a changeling. And so Benjamin Sisko's looking at the knife and realizing, what have I done? Like, I really thought my dad could be a changeling. I allowed myself to be so afraid that I brought us to this point where I hurt my father. Like, he cut himself, and I forced him into that position just to make myself feel a little bit less afraid. Like, what have I done? This can't continue.
Right.
And that was an excellent scene. So good.
Stellar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it all loops back around, and it informs Sisko's final decisions in this one, because, you know, the other gentleman, the guy who's trying to start the coup, is like, well, people need to feel safe. What we're doing is ultimately going to make them feel safer, even if it seems like a dictatorship, even if it seems like, you know, an unfair rule. People are going to feel like they can walk around again. And it's like, no, people feel safe now. What you're doing is telling them that you're inventing an other and saying that person's going to hurt you, and you need to do what I tell you to get rid of them. This is exactly the rhetoric that imperialists use to justify military action, that the United States uses to justify military action. Is they're doing bad stuff. If we don't stop them preemptively, they're going to hurt us. So let's hurt them and build up our military. Let's test everyone. Let's, you know, it's truly fascinating. And the fact that they don't portray the other guy as like foolish or as evil. Like, there's this final conversation in part 2 where Sisko finally convinces Peyton to resign from Starfleet dishonorably. And he's like, you're fighting the wrong war. Like, what you're doing is you're fighting everybody on Earth by yelling at them and by like betraying people in Starfleet by shutting down the power grid. What you're doing is letting the Dominion win, actually. Instead of like telling us things are okay and building up what we need to do and preparing ourselves, you're just creating dissent. That's all you're doing. Also, everybody who works for you has forsaken you, so you have no legs anyways.
Yeah, because the Admiral is engineering a complete military takeover of the civilian government. By the end of the first episode, there's Starfleet patrols in the streets, which, like, I thought they were Starfleet. I thought they were supposed to be space guys.
Right.
But here they are, like, in our backyard, walking around with their guns or whatever. And we find out in the second episode that some of the incidents, which would seem to imply that we need further security, were orchestrated by the Admiral. Like the whole the wormhole opening and closing.
Yeah,
they're doing that. The power shut off, he did that. All of this is meant to help him stage a fascistic takeover of the government. And you're saying that's the rhetoric of imperialists, that's the rhetoric of fascists. Like, when this episode comes out on January 19th, tomorrow, the United States is going to swear in a president who got to power again through this exact kind of rhetoric. And these episodes were, like, I think, disturbingly prescient and accurate to a lot of the things that we're going to see and feel in the United States over the next few months, over the next 4 years.
Right.
Look at who's coming over our borders. We need to have strong borders. We got to fund the police. We got to, you know, whatever the fuck it is that they're going to say in order to justify doing these sorts of things. And I think that these episodes are excellent for portraying that. I think that's also the core of critique that I have of these episodes, which is like, the Admiral, when he's cooked, is like, you're right.
I quit.
I quit.
That's not how this happens. That's not how it happens in real life.
Yeah, I think this is where, for me, these two episodes are where the Babylon 5 comparison is the most important. Because Babylon 5 ends up going in a similar direction, where there's like this fascist takeover of Earth government by a faction that wants to protect our borders or whatever. And in Star Trek, they want you to still believe that Starfleet is good. and the Federation is good.
We can't sell you our merchandise if we don't like the people on it. It's the Star Wars problem, right?
Yeah, and fundamentally, like, this is supposed to be an optimistic future. This version of Earth is a paradise, and multiple characters talk about it that way and accept that to be the case. And so in paradise, this bad actor who's trying to claim power is doing so through totally pure motives and is going to accept when he's wrong. And then we can just kind of leave these episodes like, all right, cool. So Starfleet's still good and Earth's still good and we're good because we talked the bad guys out of it. But that's just not how power functions, I don't think. And Babylon 5, in contrast, it's like, okay, well, Earth got taken over. Here's a whole episode about like a propaganda film produced for Earth News. Here's an episode where Sheridan is getting interrogated and is being told that he's going to have to like give a speech to misrepresent and further that propaganda. And ultimately, the only way to topple that regime on Earth is to come in guns blazing and like blast them out of there. And maybe you could argue that Babylon 5 is overly cynical, where this is overly optimistic, and the truth is somewhere between. But this is where the comparison, I think, is particularly important to draw, because I don't think either one gives necessarily a complete picture of how these sorts of regimes operate.
Yeah, I feel like, first of all, I would love to just sit Ira Steven Behr and J. Michael Straczynski in a room and just put a grenade in the middle and see what happens. Like, and that grenade being like, what do you guys think about imperialism and how do we stop it? Or what do you guys think about fascism? How do we stop it? Because the handshake, the Predator handshake meme is we both think like Donald J. Trump should be sent to prison, but the way that they go about that is completely different because of their backgrounds and who they are and how they lived, and so are their writer rooms. There's just so much here. I mean, I even think about like, it's by the way, it's Leighton, not Peyton. I misspoke earlier. Sorry to people who are going to correct me. Leighton saying like, well, we want people to be able to walk around and feel safe. Like we want people to be able to walk and not think anybody that they're walking by is a changeling. At one point in this episode, for a significant chunk of it, Leighton is a changeling. Like we're seeing a changeling like say that kind of stuff to him. Right. And I think even rhetoric like that gets used a lot in the United States to justify things like increased police action. We talk about like safer neighborhoods or dangerous neighborhoods. The way we fix that so that we get to this ideal of being able to walk alone at night is by bringing in more cops. And that is not how you accomplish that. If anything, that can make things a lot worse. So yeah, there's just a ton of good like metaphor stuff, great philosophy, great discussion here. It's a pretty dense, complex pair of episodes. Some other stuff I really enjoyed. The nog of it all. I think it's so, it was so interesting to me that in part one, Nog's conflict is, well, there's these guys and they're called Red Squad and I love them so much and I really want to be friends with them because the biggest problem he's having with Starfleet is he doesn't have a friend group yet. He doesn't feel like he belongs. And he says, well, but Red Squad, like everyone likes them and they like me. And if I help them, then they'll like me. And that's kind of set in the background. Like, okay, Nog's dealing with adult problems. He's talking to Jake about it. It's fine. They're eating whatever crawdads together. And then in part two, we learn that Red Squad are the people who shut the power off because of what Leighton told them to do. And suddenly Sisko is like, I need to talk to motherfucking Nog right now. And the way that he raises his voice at Nog, like, you have to tell me who those guys are. Nog's like, well, no, they're anonymous. Like, that's the whole point. He's like, you have to, for like military reasons, dude, child, you have to tell me. Yeah. And then the interview with one of them is fascinating, or the interrogation where I almost thought there was a mind control thing going on where they're like, yep, we followed orders. We shut the power off just like we were told to do. And I'm like, do they not know that they just committed treason? But it's because they were just told that that was the right thing to do by Leighton. So in their mind, it was the right thing to do. They weren't mind controlled in the sci-fi way. They were mind controlled in the propaganda way. Yeah. All that is so interesting.
I mean, I think Nog's plot is such a brilliant way to show how young, I mean, men especially, how young people get radicalized in this way to be supporters of fascist movements. It's grounded in, I think, these like feelings of loneliness or disaffection this desire to be a part of something, to be seen as powerful, to enact that power, to have a certain status or certain uniform or whatever. Like, there's a version of this where Nog could have very easily been caught up in that if he didn't have his connection with Jake, if he didn't have Benjamin Sisko as a positive role model for him to mediate that process. But like, this is an important part of the cultural project of fascism, is getting young men to identify with this version of masculinity that's about being part of like the special forces unit, or like we're one of the Spartan warriors that's going to do this cool thing or whatever. That's how you get a broad-based group of foot soldiers to go and do the stuff that other people are going to be loath to do.
Right. Well said.
So yeah, really brilliant to position Nog in that spot in the plot. Also just fun that Nog already is going to the dad's restaurant because it's the only place on the whole planet where he can get live grubs to eat.
Tube grubs.
Tube grubs, yeah.
Yucky.
That was
I eat them. And he's like, we usually cook them and put them in a sauce. And he's like, no, I like them raw because they wiggle when they go down. I'm like, your Frankies are weird. That's okay.
Yeah.
Jake, they call it the academy, but what it really is school. Is the funniest Nog line ever.
I laughed out loud.
They call it the academy, but what it really is school. And you're like, nice.
And just the other thing about Nog, it also makes total sense that he would idolize this like Red Squad idea when, Nog's a sweet kid and he's a misogynist, like fully 100% deeply internalized misogyny. And that's a part of it too.
Couple episodes ago when Sisko was like, I'm struggling with castity, we get a brief scene of Nog being like, yeah, just like degrade her, like tell her she's stupid because she's a woman. And then everyone's like, haha, shut up, Nog. But like, it's right there. They told us, they gave us the hints. The rest of my notes are about part 2. So I love the scene where the changeling in the guise of O'Brien comes up to Sisko. He's so patient. He's so friendly almost. Like, hey man, I'm just going to give you information because you're not picking up on it fast enough and we want to get this game moving. There's 4 of us. You guys are like, how many are there? 1 million? 1? 10? There's 4. You don't know who they all are. I'm one of them. All it took was 4 of us to destabilize your planet. If we wanted to do this, you guys would have been cooked by now. We're not doing it right now. And then he says, be seeing you, which I'd like to think is a Prisoner reference, but also a B5 thing. That's another
yeah, again, Babylon 5 comparison, yeah.
Yep.
I'm kind of reading the same textbooks a little bit here.
Yeah, I think that's what that is. Just the military role being a dictatorship. I think that Leighton at one point says strengthening Earth is the same thing as strengthening the Federation. Now, just go ahead and substitute those words for what they can also mean. Strengthening the U.S. is the same thing as strengthening the military. Strengthening the military is the same thing as strengthening the United States. This type of rhetoric gets used a lot of like, it's good for us, right? It makes us a better country if we donate more money to other countries or put more into bombing them. That's a good thing for us. Worf being ordered to fire on Starfleet officers after Ariaga's whole wormhole thing, and then the Defiant gets attacked. Worf having to tell them to fire on. That's a big moment for Worf that they don't really deal with yet. And then my last thing is like, where does this leave us with the Dominion? And who do we think the 4 are? Do you have any idea who the 4 changelings are? And do you think any of them are people that we have seen?
I sort of don't believe that changeling that there are 4. There could have just been 1.
That's even more interesting.
I kind of think it was just 1. Like it was just that guy who posed as Leighton in the first one, posed as O'Brien. They were the one who was in the video that they saw.
The bomb, yeah.
Yeah. I think the founders know by this point they've toppled enough planets that they know they don't have to work that hard. There doesn't actually need to be this deep network of spies. there just needs to be the impression that such a network exists.
Right.
Very
Cold War.
Right, exactly. This is that McCarthyist thing, the Cold War thing. Like it doesn't actually matter whether or not there's been a true infiltration of the deep state or the whatever, the administrative state.
Yeah.
You just need to get people to be scared enough that they do all of the toppling for you.
Right.
Which is what happens here.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't believe that guy. I think it's a lie. And I don't think the episode wants us, like, it doesn't really want us to be doing the Battlestar Galactica thing.
Yeah.
Of, oh, someone's a Cylon, like, who is it?
Yeah.
Because the changelings can also shift and be different people at different times too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do they do with the original person when
I don't know.
Like they impersonate Leighton? So it's like, where is Leighton during that? Do they
I think he was just like in his office or something. He was just in a different room.
The best scene of changeling stuff in this one is not just the O'Brien one, but at the beginning when the president, I love the performance from the president of Earth.
Yes, me too.
Cool alien guy who's like, hey man, I don't want to be the one who takes the keys and initiates martial law. I'm just going to hand you guys the keys. But early on, he's like, changelings? That seems a little paranoid, guys. I just don't think. And then Odo is a briefcase in the corner that turns into Odo. And he's like, it was that easy. I just walked up to you and did it. Come on. You guys are not doing this right. That was so fun. And then the other good changeling transformation was when the Leighton one runs away and he runs and then turns into goo and flies into a bird and flies away. I was like, changelings are so silly.
Yeah.
I think
subtle thing that I really thought was smart about the president is he's not human. He's the president of the Federation, which just happens to have its capital on Earth.
You're right.
And the Federation obviously includes tons and tons of planets. So I would imagine that a lot of the time the president of the Federation is not human, but has some jurisdiction over Earth, being the capital. But there's this moment where Leighton's like, well, and the president's not human, so he's not really gonna fight that hard to protect Earth the way that we would.
Yeah.
So there's also this nativist racial purity thing underlying it, like Earth for humans sort of sentiment. That again, I think Star Trek doesn't want to do that too hard because this is supposed to be the fun future where everybody is cool now.
You can make your own food.
You can make your own food. We're not racist anymore. It's chill. Yeah. But that's another part of the fascist thing, is this sort of nativist, blood and soil purity. Let's expel the
America for
alien
Americans
guy who's exactly. So I thought that was a pretty interesting component as well.
The choice was not lost on me.
Yes.
These are both S's, obviously, right?
Yeah, these are S's for sure.
Swaggy. That would have been a great way to end it, but we had one more episode just to squeeze in by the half, which is a fascinating last one to discuss. It's 413 Crossfire, which is so simple, you guys. A new Bajoran religious figure comes to the station and has known Kira for at least most of their lives, 10 plus years. Their relationship is starting to rekindle, and she realizes she might have feelings for him. Meanwhile, Odo is assigned to find out who might be trying to assassinate this dignitary, and that conflicts with his emotional attraction to Kira, which leads to him committing some oopsie whoopsies, including almost letting the guy die in a turbo lift because he wasn't paying attention when he was tricked by the assassin. And the assassin basically gets himself caught without Odo's assistance. And Odo's like, damn, I need to be better at my job and navigate this whole Kira thing that's going on in my brain. And he has this beautiful conversation with Quark at the end that's like, either tell her or focus on your work. Get your shit together. And Odo the poor friend-zoned lover that he is, tries to talk to Kira, and she says, I really appreciate that I can tell you everything, you're such a good friend, and hugs him. And that's pretty much it. And then his relationship with Quark is strengthened, his relationship with Kira is on the rocks.
Mm-hmm.
How do we feel about Odo, man?
This is a sweet, sad episode.
Yeah.
This had to go in this direction. I think him like being in love with Kira and pining for Kira, he either needed to tell her or
Quark
move
says
on,
tell her.
which is what Quark says.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't think it would have worked for the show for him to tell her. Like, I don't really see them together necessarily. I don't think she's interested in him in that way, and I think it would have been a disservice to her character to like make her interested in him. But she obviously cares about him very deeply. So and I think he knows that.
Yeah.
And I think he understands like the feelings that she has for me, that warmth that I get from her is friendship, and that's important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also painful to like be so close to that friendship and have it and not be able to say how I feel or not be able to experience something closer with her. So this, I've been in situations like this in my life. I can relate to Odo in this episode quite well, and it's sad. He makes a hard choice by the end of it, and I think they portray that in like a really patient, tender way that doesn't ever stray into territory this could stray into of like resentment towards Kira or this expectation that she owes something to him or
Right.
that she's making the wrong choice. Like, I think she's actually making the right choice for her. She was grieving Vedic Barile and she's getting back out there and moving on with her life, and that's important for her too. So I think they do a good job with what is like, it was a little sad and make me like, oh, kind of an episode.
Odo. Yeah, I think I'm noticing that one of the biggest concepts that differentiates DS9 from TNG is that TNG will often say, hey, despite it all, being human is fundamentally a beautiful thing. We persevere despite hardship and our own faults, and we keep working towards the great work, right? Going back to that Angels in America quote. DS9 is like, we are so flawed. We destroy ourselves. We fight within. We engage in our worst impulses. And it doesn't have a predicate to that sentence. It's just like, it's just true. It's just, we are really profoundly fucked up. Yes, we continue to exist. Yes, the fact that DS9 as a station still functions is beautiful and profound, especially considering its history with the Bajorans and the Cardassians. The fact that it works is a miracle. It's a different way of framing that TNG question of like, isn't humanity great? It's like, yeah, we're almost great in spite of ourselves. We're almost great despite our worst, most base impulses of love and jealousy and envy, And I think that's really beautiful. It's really thought-provoking, especially as an adult. I'm really glad to come to the show as an adult and think like, yeah, we can't pretend that we're better than falling in love with our coworker. It happens to all of us. It's bad. It's embarrassing. It's something you don't like to talk about, but it's real. And a lot of people can relate to this, even though it's uncomfortable and awkward and sad. Some stuff that's good in this one. God, the scene where Kira's like, what happened to your belt? And he's like, well, what do you mean my belt? I didn't need it. I'm practical. And she's like, I like the belt that you used to have. And Odo shapeshifts a belt back onto himself to make her happy. That's really sweet and kind of simpy, but the fact that it comes back later and she goes, where's your belt? Like, you took it off. And he's like, I didn't need it. Yeah. He's kind of is beautiful, right? He's like, I don't need to do something just to please you. I do things that are like good for me. That's growth.
Yeah.
I joked in my notes that when Kira hugs Odo and says, thank you for being such a good friend, if I was that character, I would crash out. This is the moment where I would be like, if I jumped out of the airlock, would I die instantly? Or like, that's how a lot of people feel. And then just the quirk of it all. The quirk of it all is so good. He comes upward to Odo in his funny little pajamas at the end of the episode. And he's like, hey, I need you to get better. I have money on this. Because Quark can't just be nice. It has to be about money. He reveals that there is a betting pool on how fast Odo can solve this crime because everybody knows Odo always gets his man. And they're like, yeah, we do this every time, dude. And if you don't get it soon, then I lose money. That's why I'm helping you. Not because I like you or anything like that. I think this is still very sweet. You know, Odo's like, I almost thought you were my friend. That was like a nice friend thing to do. And Quark basically says like, it's not that. It is that.
Yeah. What I liked about it is it's almost this affirmation from Quark. Like, you could read it as he just can't quite say his feelings. But there's also this affirmation from Quark where Odo's like, oh, I thought you were acting differently than you normally do. And Quark being like, no, I'm acting the way I would normally do, is almost as if to say, like, I've always been your friend.
Yeah.
Like,
we're
we're buds, man. And this thing we do where I kind of commit some crimes and you catch me for some crimes, and
this is what we do.
Make time for each other. This is what we do. This is our friendship. And I'm invested in you, and I always have been. And obviously Quark just does not have the emotional intelligence to like convey that. But this is the way that he communicates that. He's not taking an unusual interest in Odo's well-being. He's always interested in it. He just has to like intervene here because Odo's having a hard time.
And has to frame it as like, it's because of money, but like,
yeah,
I think it also comes from Quark's like cultural raising, right? You know, masculinity is a challenging thing in Ferengi society, and so he can't just be like, I'm doing this because I want to help you. He literally can't. He is never raised to think like that. It's super duper interesting.
Yeah.
A couple of quick gayness check-ins I like to do. I forgot to do one earlier because it was in Homefront, but at the beginning of Homefront, when Sisko says he's going to Earth, Bashir and O'Brien pop over, and they have been doing a World War II fighter pilot roleplay on the holodeck, where they both do British accents, and they're like, we're here for a pint. Oh, hello. And they do that. And they're like, come on, Odo, you're in for the next one. We got a Spitfire with your name on it. That's very gay. We do roleplay, World War II roleplay together. Hot. Next gay moment. The opener and ender of this episode is this thing about, Odo, why do you have your quarters above Quark's? Because I like to keep an eye on him. And when I do transformation practice at 3 a.m, I do my night classes. It bothers him, and I kind of get a sick kick out of doing that. This argument early on about like, you were like a gazelle, like stamping everywhere. And he's like, yeah. And then I felt bad, so I turned into a mouse. And he's like, a mouse walking on my ceiling is worse, dude. Like, it's all. And then at the end, when he's like, I installed soundproofing so you wouldn't hear it anymore. He's like, you did that for me? He's like, no, I just did it to be practical. They can't just say it. They can't just say the thing. And last but not least, Bashir at one point in this episode says that O'Brien's dress uniform, because they all have to get in dress uniforms for the guy, he says it highlights his figure. Come on. Come on, boys. Wrap it up. That's all I got. That's my gay check-ins. This is a fun episode.
Yeah, it was fun.
Eh?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of good, tender writing in this one. I love all the torture of Odo, where the guy is like, maybe I should just be patient, and Odo's like, that's what I would do. And then the guy's like, or maybe I should tell her my feelings.
He's like, that's not what I would do.
Odo's like, oh fuck, I fucked up.
I'm gonna crash out so hard.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, so A.
Okay.
All right, so that concludes this half of the season. To recap, we have 4 B episodes: Hippocratic Oath, Starship Down, Little Green Men, and the Sword of Kalis. 3 A episodes: Indiscretion, Our Man Bashir, and Crossfire. And then 5 S episodes: The Way of the Warrior, The Visitor, Rejoined, Homefront, and Paradise Lost.
I feel really good about this list.
I think that's the best chunk of Trek episodes we've ever watched.
Yeah, I think so. Especially because I'm thinking like it's a half season we've done. We were doing full seasons of TNG,
right?
But for a half, I think this is the best half. Yes.
Yeah.
In terms of what we rank S's, at least. Yeah, it's just a great mix of like individual episodes that happened to be stellar, The show is finding its voice really well. It's never boring, even when it's like not an interesting premise. They make it fun, and when they build up this sort of like series long plot with the Dominion and whatnot, it's fascinating. It's got real life implications. It's interesting to look at. It's interesting to read about, and yeah, it's firing all the good neurons in my brain in a great way. I love this chunk of eps.
Big time.
All right, what do we do next, John?
So we'll be back to talk more TrekChatz in about a month and a half or so. That's our normal cadence. We'll obviously let you know on main feed episodes as we're getting closer to that. Next week, we are returning to discussing Xena Warrior Princess, and we're concluding season 3, which is exciting. So that brings us to episodes 21 and 22 of season 3 of Xena Warrior Princess, entitled Sacrifice, parts 1 and 2. You want to know what happens in this?
Yeah, I have a feeling you're gonna need to be careful though.
Yeah, I will be.
Okay, go for it.
Callisto, played by Hudson Leak, returns to do something evil, and I'm not gonna say what. Part 2. I'm not going to say what happened.
Okay, fantastic. Callisto's gonna do some nasty shit next week.
That's right.
I love it. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Magellan, that being said, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on a podcast that I do with my friend Justin called Super Smash Echoes, where we play video games related to the Super Smash Brothers franchise and discuss those. Super Smash Echoes, check it out. You can read my writing for the time being on my Substack at notthatmagellan.substack.com. And you can follow me on Bluesky, notthatmagellan.bsky.social. Alan, what about you?
As August 2023 was the last episode of Super Smash Echoes.
Yeah, I know that.
I know.
Recently.
Oh, is it?
I gotta edit.
Oh, excellent. Okay. 2025, a big year for podcasts. I am also on the Creature Quorum every other week or so, where my friend Six and I on ScanlineMedia.com play through the Pokemon franchise, specifically Pokemon's Black and White and Black and White 2. We're about halfway through Black 2 and White 2 right now and having a great time. You can hear me every month or so on the Garnet Wager, which is a show where we watch Korean game shows like The Devil's Plan and The Genius and talk about them in a sort of narrative storytelling format. And last but not least, you can hear me and my production every other month on Talking Marketing, which is an AMA Boston marketing interview podcast that I do for my volunteer job at AMA. I'll be doing that through June of this year, and then I'll be retiring. So check out Talking Marketing, check out the Creature Quorum, and check out the Garnet Wager, please. John, you want to take the plugs on this week?
Sure, I would love to. You can get in touch with the show in a few different ways. You can email us to chatzpod@gmail.com with any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, requests. If there's anything you want us to read on the show, we would love to do that. We'd be happy to do that, okay? If you'd like to be on an episode, maybe there's a Xena episode that you'd like to watch with us and discuss, we welcome that. We cherish that and we love that. So you can email us again at chatzpod@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Bluesky as a show at chatzpod.bsky.social, I believe is correct, right?
That's correct.
Every instance, by the way, of Chatzpod is spelled CHATZPOD, of course. A couple other things to note. You can find us on YouTube, where we have video version of the podcast, Chatz Television Podcast on YouTube. Consider rating us there, subscribing there, or sharing with people, doing the stuff that you do on the internet to spread the word. Also, you can consider supporting us financially on Patreon at patreon.com/chatspod for $1, $3, or $5 a month. $1 a month gets you onto our Discord, where we talk about shows like Star Trek or shows like Xena or shows like Doctor Who sometimes, maybe as well, or who knows, whatever else people are watching and want to talk about. $3 a month gets you twice monthly bonus content. This month, our first bonus episode has been our discussion of the music that we love the most from last year. And our second bonus episode, we spun the wheel off screen and figured out that we're going to be doing one of listener Ryan's suggestions and piloting the show Flash Forward. So that's kind of fun. You can catch that later in the month. $5 a month gets you thanked right here at the end of every episode. Thank you, as always, to Stefan, Six, Noel, Nick of the Brothers at Infinite War, my mom, May Louise, Marcus, Lee, Kyrie, Justin, Jen, Felicia, Emrys, Emily, Arthur, and of course, my love, my lady love, Amanda. Thank you all so much for supporting the show. Thank you also to Camilla at Camillastrator for creating our podcast art. We're still using it. We're still loving it. All right. Thanks, Camilla. You do great stuff. Alan, now it's time for our Chatzums, something for the folks to snack on between now and next time. What is your Chatsum for this week?
My Chatsum for this week is both a podcast that I'm going to be on soon and a video game that I'm playing for said podcast. Specifically the Scanline Media podcast, Novel Not New. I don't think I've Chatsum them before. I've certainly talked about them, but essentially Jen and Six from Scanline Media every month play through a narrative game, whether it's a visual novel usually or a game with a heavy story focus. And they talk about it like a book club, similar to how Chatz talks about TV like a book club. And they've been doing it for a long time. And I think it's just it's such a labor of love, because what people don't realize when they think about doing a playthrough podcast is how much prep work that amounts to. Like, we watch about an hour and a half of TV a week, and that's like just enough for us. They are playing like games that are upwards of 20 hours a month, and in addition to their regular lives, sometimes way more than that. And so I recommend their podcast because you should support them, and because they're my friends and they're good and the podcast is good. And also, we're talking about Metal Gear Solid 4 in January, end of the month, which is the end of my journey with them covering the Metal Gear Solid games. I had never played them before, and I bought a PS3 copy of 4 recently because it's never been re-released anywhere. And it's a really fascinating conclusion to the franchise. I think playing a game from, I think that's 07 or 08, you really see how different gaming was back then. Like, what does a big budget game look like in 2007 or 8? It is ambitious, it is long, it is ponderous, it is also very fun in parts when you get to play it, and when it's not literally breaking Guinness Book of World Records for longest cutscenes. So many cutscenes, but they're so good is the thing. And if you've ever been interested in the Metal Gear franchise, the one thing I'll say is, first of all, just play the HD collection of 1, 2, and 3. That's the best way to experience those on modern day. It's on everything. And 2, don't be intimidated by them. Like, the story seems pretty dense, but when you actually play them, it's kind of been like my biggest conclusion is like, I always thought of Metal Gear as this insurmountable franchise that I'll never get and I'll never be able to play. And you play them and you're like, oh, these are, when you break it down into little chunks like this, they're kind of just like action games where you sometimes take a benefit from being a little patient. And they're not that hard. They're just, they do tickle a certain part of the brain, like I said earlier. So I do chat some Metal Gear Solid 4. I'm confident saying that. I'm only about halfway through it, but I'm really having a good time. What about you? What's your chatsum this week?
My chatsum this week is a fun website chatsum. You know, let's make the internet about fun websites again.
Yeah.
For you. It's called deathgenerator.com. And essentially, this is somebody's labor of love. They credit themselves as Foon Touring at Foon, Foone. I found them through Bluesky. And the way that the website works is they have basically all of these different UI screens from different older video games, like kind of SNES era looking games, 32-bit type stuff. And you can just type in whatever text you want and it'll render that text in the screen grab from these different games. And then you can download them and text them to people without context. And it's like, oh my God, you have Mario 64 too. Like, why is Peach from Mario 64 writing me a letter about pizza? What the heck? That's so funny. So,
should I show the people the one that you just sent me?
Yeah.
This is from a Yu-Gi-Oh game. Oh, you can't read it on the thing. It says, I like tasty pizza, and it's Yu-Gi-Oh from Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah.
That's not working out. Anyways, I love this website. What is it called again? Death Generator?
Death Generator.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it's just a fun way to fuck around on the internet.
Yeah. Again, make websites fun again. That's what we need.
Mm-hmm.
Make websites again. I'm sick of the same 3 websites.
Mm-hmm.
Go away, Mark Zuckerberg. Anyways, sorry. Don't get me started. Oh, I love it, Magellan. Thank you so much for joining me on this extended coverage of these batch of episodes. Always a joy. Thanks as always. Honestly, pick your male on male ship to compare us to this time, right? I got such a bounty of options. I've done Garrick and Bashir. I've done Bashir and O'Brien, Bashir and Dax. Thank you for being. Hold on. What's her name? Hold on. Yeah. Yes. What's her name though? What's the lady's? That's Con. Thank you for being the con to my Chatsy attacks. Because at the end of the day, it's all a little gay. Thank you so much for listening to TrekChatz. Peace. Over and out.
Bye.
Bye. Did my chair just